Once upon a time, in a world filled with mysteries and wonders, there was a place in the ocean known as the Bermuda Triangle. This triangle was not like any ordinary triangle. It was a strange and spooky part of the Atlantic Ocean where many ships and airplanes seemed to vanish without a trace. People called it the Bermuda Triangle, and it was surrounded by stories of adventure, fear, and the unknown. Imagine a place where the waves whisper secrets and the winds carry tales of the lost. Some say that if you listen closely, you can hear the echoes of those who disappeared. If you love stories that send shivers down your spine, you're in for a treat. Make sure to subscribe and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. Get cozy, turn off the lights, and prepare for a tale that will keep you on the edge of your seat. In a small coastal town, there lived a young boy named Tommy. Tommy was brave and adventurous, always dreaming of exploring the ocean. One day, he heard the older fishermen talking about the Bermuda Triangle. They warned each other to stay away from that cursed place. But Tommy was curious. He wanted to know what made the Bermuda Triangle so scary. One sunny afternoon, Tommy decided to go on an adventure. He grabbed his little boat, the Sea Star, and set out toward the horizon. The waves danced around him, and the sun sparkled on the water. He felt excited and a little nervous. As he sailed farther from shore, the sky turned a strange shade of gray. The wind picked up, and the waves became choppy. Tommy's heart raced. He remembered the stories about the Bermuda Triangle. Suddenly, the sky darkened even more, and a thick fog rolled in. Tommy could barely see in front of him. He felt a chill run down his spine. Maybe I should turn back, he thought, but his curiosity pushed him forward. He wanted to see the mysterious triangle for himself. As the fog surrounded him, Tommy heard a strange sound. It was like a soft whisper calling his name. Tommy, Tommy, it echoed through the mist. He looked around, but there was no one there. His heart pounded in his chest. Who's there? He shouted, but the only answer was the sound of the waves crashing against his boat. Just then, a shadowy figure appeared in the fog. It looked like a ship, but it was old and ghostly. The sails were tattered, and the wood was rotting. Tommy's eyes widened in fear. He had heard stories of ghost ships that sailed the Bermuda Triangle, and now he was seeing one for himself. The ghost ship drifted closer, and Tommy could see the faces of the crew. They looked sad and lost, their eyes staring blankly into the distance. "Help us," one of them cried out, reaching a bony hand toward Tommy. "We are trapped in this triangle forever." Tommy felt a wave of fear wash over him. He wanted to help, but he didn't know how. "What happened to you?" he asked, his voice shaking. "We were sailing long ago," the ghostly captain explained. "We entered the Bermuda Triangle, and the storm took us. Now we are lost, and we need a brave soul to guide us home." Tommy's heart raced. He was just a boy, but he felt a strange connection to these lost souls. "I will help you," he shouted, determined to make a difference. But as he reached out to grab the captain's hand, the fog thickened, and the ghost ship began to fade away. "No! Come back!" Tommy yelled, but it was too late. The ship vanished into the mist, and Tommy was left alone in the eerie silence. The fog slowly lifted, revealing the ocean around him, but something felt different. The air was heavy, and the water was still. It was as if time had stopped. Tommy looked around, trying to find his way back. The sun was gone, and the stars twinkled above him, but they felt distant and cold. He felt a strange pull, as if the Bermuda Triangle was trying to keep him there. He started to row, but the water felt thick, like it was resisting his efforts. As he paddled, he heard whispers again, but this time they were louder and more frantic. "Help us! Help us!" they cried. Tommy felt a chill run down his spine. He couldn't tell where the voices were coming from. Were they from the lost souls of the ghost ship, or was it something else lurking in the depths of the ocean? Suddenly, a huge wave crashed against the Sea Star, sending Tommy tumbling into the water. He gasped as the cold water enveloped him. Panic set in as he struggled to swim back to his boat. But the waves were relentless, pulling him under. Just when he thought he would drown, he felt something grab his arm and pull him back up. Gasping for air, Tommy looked up to see a figure emerging from the water. It was a mermaid, her long hair flowing like seaweed. Her eyes were deep and ancient, filled with wisdom and sadness. "You should not be here, young one," she said, her voice melodic yet haunting. "The Bermuda Triangle is a place of lost dreams and forgotten souls." Tommy was terrified but also fascinated. "I want to help them," he exclaimed. "How can I save the lost souls?" The mermaid shook her head. "It is not easy. The triangle has its own magic, and it will not let them go easily. You must face your fears and find the heart of the triangle to free them." Tommy nodded, feeling a mix of fear and determination. "I will do it," he declared. The mermaid smiled sadly and pointed toward a dark spot in the water. "Follow that path, but beware of what you may find." With a deep breath, Tommy swam toward the dark spot. The water was cold and murky, and he could feel something lurking below. As he got closer, the darkness began to swirl, forming shapes that looked like the lost souls of the ghost ship. They reached out for him, their faces twisted in anguish. "Help us, Tommy," they cried. "We cannot escape." Tommy felt a surge of courage. "I will help you," he shouted, but the darkness began to pull him in. He struggled against it, feeling the weight of despair closing in around him. Just when he thought he would be lost forever, he remembered the mermaid's words. He had to find the heart of the triangle. With all his strength, Tommy swam deeper into the darkness, focusing on the light that flickered in the distance. As he swam, he felt the whispers growing louder, urging him to turn back. "You don't belong here," they screamed. "Leave while you can." But Tommy pressed on, determined to reach the light. As he got closer, he saw a glowing orb pulsating with energy. It was beautiful and warm, and he felt drawn to it. He reached out and touched the orb, and suddenly, everything changed. The darkness around him began to dissolve, and the lost souls appeared before him, their faces filled with hope. "You found it," they exclaimed. "You can set us free." Tommy felt a rush of power as he held the orb tightly. "I will help you," he shouted, and he focused all his energy into the light. The orb began to glow brighter, and the lost souls started to rise, their chains of despair breaking apart. As they ascended into the light, Tommy felt a sense of relief wash over him. The whispers faded, replaced by a chorus of grateful voices. "Thank you, Tommy. Thank you," they sang as they vanished into the sky. But just as he felt triumphant, the darkness surged back, angry and vengeful. The Bermuda Triangle was not ready to let him go. Waves crashed around him, and he was pulled under again, the water closing in like a heavy blanket. Tommy fought to swim back to the surface, but the darkness was too strong. He felt himself sinking deeper and deeper, the weight of the ocean pressing down on him. Just when he thought he would be lost forever, he remembered the mermaid's words again. He had to believe in himself and his courage. With a burst of determination, Tommy kicked his legs and swam upward, pushing through the darkness. He broke the surface, gasping for air, and saw the fog lifting. The stars twinkled above him, and he could see the outline of his boat in the distance. Exhausted but relieved, Tommy swam toward the sea star. He climbed aboard, his heart racing with adrenaline. The Bermuda Triangle was still there, but he had faced its darkness and helped the lost souls find their way home. As he sailed back to shore, the sky began to clear, and the sun started to rise. Tommy felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had faced his fears and discovered the power of bravery and kindness. The Bermuda Triangle was still a place of mystery, but he knew that he had made a difference. When he finally reached the shore, he could see the fishermen waiting for him, their faces filled with concern. "Tommy, we thought we lost you," they exclaimed, rushing to help him. "I'm okay," Tommy replied, a smile spreading across his face. "I saw the ghost ship, and I helped them." The fishermen listened in awe as Tommy recounted his adventure. They realized that the Bermuda Triangle was not just a place of fear, but also a place where bravery and hope could shine through the darkness. From that day on, Tommy became a legend in his town. He was known as the boy who faced the Bermuda Triangle and returned with stories of lost souls and the magic of the ocean. And every time the fishermen gathered by the shore, they would tell his tale, reminding everyone that even in the darkest places, there is always a chance for light to break through. As the sun set over the ocean, casting a golden glow on the waves, Tommy looked out at the horizon. He knew that the Bermuda Triangle would always hold its mysteries, but he also knew that he had the courage to face them. And who knows what other adventures awaited him in the vast, enchanting ocean. Tommy was filled with excitement thinking about the adventure he had just endured, but as he stared out at the ocean, he noticed that the waves didn't seem quite right. They rolled in patterns that felt almost like whispers, as if the sea was trying to tell him something. He shook off the feeling and tried to focus on the warmth of the sun on his skin, but the unease clung to him. He could still hear the echoes of the ghostly voices from his encounter in the Bermuda Triangle. "Help us! Help us!" rang through his mind, cutting through the joy of his return like a knife. Tommy wondered if perhaps the souls he had freed were not entirely at peace. What if other souls lingered, waiting in the shadows of the triangle? The thought made him shiver, but the thrill of a new mystery pushed him forward. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, Tommy couldn't shake his curiosity. He wanted to investigate further. He felt a pull, as if the ocean was calling him back. Just one more look, he decided, tugging on his life jacket. He climbed back into the Sea Star, determined to return to the place where he found the glowing orb. The sea was eerily calm as he paddled out again, and the once beautiful sunset gave way to an unsettling darkness. The shadows stretched long on the water, creating shapes that danced and twirled, making it seem like the ocean was alive with secrets. Tommy felt his heart racing, but he pressed on, determined to face whatever lay ahead. Memories of the ghost ship flickered in his mind, and he couldn't help but feel a mixture of dread and excitement. As he crossed the threshold back into the dangerous waters of the triangle, fog swirled around him again, heavier this time. It wrapped around him like a cold blanket, and the familiar whispers returned. "Tommy, come play with us," a voice said, soft and melodic yet tinged with a chilling edge that sent ice down his spine. He looked around frantically, heart pounding. "Who's there?" he shouted, but no one answered. Suddenly, right in front of him, something broke through the surface of the water. It was a figure, dripping and pale, with long hair that floated like seaweed. Tommy felt the blood drain from his face as he recognized it as another lost soul, one whose features were still twisted with pain. "Help me, Tommy," it gasped, reaching out with bony fingers. The figure splashed back into the water, creating ripples that spread outwards, and Tommy suddenly saw more shadows emerging from the depths. They began to surround his boat, their hollow eyes glinting like stones in the moonlight. The air was thick with a feeling of hopelessness, and Tommy felt trapped in the luminous darkness. "Help us," they begged, creating a haunting chorus. Tommy's instinct screamed at him to paddle back to shore, but his body refused to move. He couldn't turn away from the sight in front of him. The shadows crowded closer, their hands reaching for him as if to pull him into their world. "You've been here before, Tommy. Don't you want to join us?" One of them whispered, its voice sickly sweet and low. He struggled to find his voice, his throat dry as he stammered, "No, I want you to all be free. I helped before." But the more he spoke, the angrier the shadows became. Their whispers turned into shouts, echoing in his ears. "Free? No one is ever free here. You will never escape us." Tommy's heart raced, and for a moment, he thought he would indeed be lost in their nightmarish grip. Just when it seemed like all hope was fading, he remembered the glowing orb. He realized the strength of the light he had discovered wasn't just a physical object. It was also the courage inside him. "You don't scare me," he shouted defiantly. "I freed the others, and you can be free too." The shadows paused for a moment, their hungry grasp faltering. Tommy's declaration hung in the air as the weight of desperation was replaced with the flicker of uncertainty. "You think words can save us?" A voice sneered, deep and resonant, vibrating through the water. "Your courage will not be strong enough. You will fail, and you will join us." As if answering the taunt, the sea erupted. The waves leapt high, crashing against the sides of the sea star, and a mighty storm seemed to rise from nowhere. Rain poured down in sheets, and lightning split the sky, illuminating the dark shapes around him. The storm was furious, angry at Tommy for defying the shadows. He had awoken something deep within the Bermuda Triangle, and it was now determined to swallow him whole. Tommy fought against the wind and rain, his hands gripping the sides of the boat. He knew he needed to act fast. "I won't give up. I won't let you have me," he yelled into the storm, summoning every ounce of courage within him. He focused on the light he had felt during his first encounter with the glowing orb. His heart began to beat in rhythm with the storm, a fiery pulse against the cold despair. Just then, he spotted it again, the glowing orb of light rising from the depths. The shadows recoiled from it, hissing and shrieking in fury. The air crackled with energy as the orb grew larger, illuminating the dark waters around him. Tommy understood now that this light was a part of him, a beacon against the darkness. With renewed hope, he reached out toward the orb, pouring every ounce of bravery he had into his words. "Be free," he cried. "The light can save you. It can save us all." The orb pulsed with life as he spoke, shining brighter than the darkest shadows. Suddenly, the shadows began to scream, not in anger but in terror, as the light engulfed them. Struggling against the storm, Tommy lifted his hands, urging the light to grow even brighter. And then, with a deafening roar, the light burst forth, flooding the entire area with warmth and brilliance. Tommy's heart soared as the shadows were pulled into the radiance, their cries dissolving into peaceful whispers. The storm whipped around him, but he felt no fear. He had become one with the light. In that moment, he realized that the Bermuda Triangle was a place of struggle, but also of hope for those who dared to face the darkness. With a final flash, the orb spiraled into the air like a shooting star streaking across the night sky. The shadows vanished, leaving a serene stillness in their place. The storm subsided, and the water calmed as Tommy looked around, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over him. But something tugged at his heart. Were there more souls lingering in the depths, waiting for help? Did the Bermuda Triangle hide other dark secrets? Just then, a figure appeared again, but it was different this time. A woman, her face soft and glowing, glided toward him from the water. "Thank you, brave boy," she said, her voice gentle and soothing. "You have freed many tonight, but there are still some trapped in the depths. The Triangle is not done with you yet." Tommy stared wide-eyed. "What do you mean?" he asked, suddenly feeling the weight of her words. The woman smiled sadly. "You have more to discover, more to learn. The darkness will always try to creep in again, but you have the power to face it. The sea needs a protector, someone who understands both light and dark." Before he could respond, she shimmered and faded back into the water, leaving him feeling both blessed and burdened with purpose. Tommy realized this was only the beginning of his journey. The Bermuda Triangle was a place where the lines between fear and bravery blurred, where light battled darkness, and where his story was meant to continue. Determined to uncover the mysteries that lay beneath the waves, Tommy set his course back toward the heart of the triangle. The stars above him twinkled brightly, almost like signals urging him forward, guiding him to the next part of his adventure. He felt ready for whatever would come next, ready to embrace the strange and eerie world beneath the surface. But just as he prepared to plunge back into the unknown, a shadow crossed over his boat. He glanced up, and his heart nearly stopped. Above him, a dark silhouette loomed, an enormous shape beneath the water, moving closer. The sense of dread returned, wrapping around him like cold fingers. He squinted, trying to see what it was, as the shape loomed larger and larger, rising from the depths. It was massive, its form barely visible against the darkness of the ocean. With his blood running cold, Tommy could now see it clearly, a creature more ancient than he had ever imagined, its scales glistening like obsidian in the dim light. It had bright eyes that glinted with intelligence and mischief. A sea serpent, he thought, and dread overcame him. What did it want? Would it be friend or foe? As it breached the surface, water splashing around him, Tommy's heart raced in fear. The serpent twisted and turned, circling the sea star, its voice echoing like thunder across the waves. You've broken the spell, little boy. But that only means you have caught my attention. Tommy gasped, his fight-or-flight instincts kicking in. What do you mean? He asked, summoning all the courage he could muster. I'm here to help. I saved the lost souls. The serpent laughed, a deep rumble that shook the water beneath him. Yes. And what makes you think you have power here? The triangle has its own magic, and it feeds on fear. You have opened a door, young one, but others will come to seek what they desire. Tommy felt a chill run through him. He understood now that the Bermuda Triangle held more than just lost souls. It was a realm where many dark forces could be unleashed. What do you want from me? He asked, hoping his voice didn't betray his fear. I want to see if you can truly stand against the darkness, the serpent replied, its eyes narrowing. I will give you a choice. You can turn away now, return to your peaceful life, or you can stay and fight the shadows that come for you. The ocean is vast, and the darkness is hungry. The weight of the serpent's words settled on Tommy like a wave crashing down. He had tasted the thrill of adventure and felt the rush of bravery. He thought about the others, the lost souls still trapped in the depths. He couldn't turn back now. I choose to stay, he said boldly, surprising even himself with his resolve. Very well, the serpent said, a mix of approval and amusement in its voice. Then your journey has just begun. Beware of what lurks in the depths. And remember, light can only shine when darkness is faced. With that, the serpent dove deep into the ocean, leaving Tommy alone once more. But this time he felt a new sense of purpose. Determined to unearth the secrets of the Bermuda Triangle, Tommy steered the Sea Star back toward the heart of the triangle. He could feel the weight of unseen eyes watching him, each ripple in the water sending shivers down his spine. Adventure awaited, but so did danger. The horizon glimmered under the pale moonlight, and Tommy's heart raced with anticipation. But as he sailed deeper into the triangle, the waves began to shift and change. The water's surface rippled unnaturally, and shadows danced just beneath, teasing the edges of his vision. Tommy's senses were heightened. The air crackled with tension, and the darkness whispered promises and threats in equal measure. A strange stillness fell over the sea, an eerie silence that pierced through the stormy winds. Suddenly, Tommy noticed a deep rumbling noise just beneath the surface, growing louder by the second. The boat rocked violently as the sound intensified, and Tommy fought to maintain control. What is happening? He shouted into the darkness. The water began to churn, and before he could react, an immense whirlpool formed right ahead of him, its maelstrom pulling everything into its depths. Tommy watched in horror as debris and shadows whirled around, merging with the turbulent water. The fear returned as he fought against the tide, knowing he couldn't let the whirlpool take him. With all his strength, he turned the boat and began to row away from the swirling chaos. But the whirlpool was relentless, sucking at the Sea Star as if trying to claim him. Just when he thought he would be pulled under, he noticed something glowing at the center of the whirlpool. It was the orb of light, the very same light that had helped him before. It's calling me, he realized, his instincts screaming for him to go toward it, to embrace the light. Yet the swirling darkness felt like a trap, ready to swallow him whole. I must find a way to reach it, he murmured, glancing at the approaching vortex. With a determined shout, he steered towards the center, channeling all his courage into a single thought. I will not be consumed. Tommy rowed with all his might, fighting against the tide, inching closer to the orb as the whirlpool howled around him. The wind screamed in his ears, and the shadows clawed at the edges of his boat, desperate to drag him down. As if I were easy prey, the light pulsed ahead of me, beckoning like a distant star in a stormy night. I could feel the very essence of danger swirling around me, a chilly thin mist that seemed to whisper my deepest fears. Tommy, come to the light, the voices of the lost souls screeched. their cries morphing into laughter that echoed through the chaos. "You will be one of us soon." The laughter sent a shiver down my spine, but I couldn't let it shake my resolve. Every stroke toward the orb filled me with both dread and hope, a war of emotions clashing within me. The boat lurched violently as the whirlpool grabbed hold of it, shaking me violently. I barely managed to hold on, knuckles white against the cold wood. The sound of rushing water drowned out my thoughts, and the shadows reaching from the depths clawed at the edges of my vision. I was running out of time. Just when it seemed like the whirlpool would drag me under, the glowing orb surged brighter, illuminating the darkness surrounding it. It was as if it was feeding off my determination. I could see faces flicker within the shadows, a terrifying blend of sorrow and rage, their mouths moving in silent screams. They wanted to trap me in their fate, to share their unending night. With my heart pounding wildly, I focused on the warmth of that light. "I won't become one of you," I shouted defiantly, my voice barely a whisper against the roar of the maelstrom. Summoning every ounce of strength, I surged forward, the wind swirling around me like a whirlwind of dark memories trying to pull me back, times when fear had consumed me. Just then, a cold hand gripped my ankle, pulling me down, dragging me into the depths. I glanced down, and my heart nearly stopped. A shadowy figure, pale and gaunt, emerged from the watery darkness, its hollow eyes glistening with malice. It was a soul that had been lost long ago, one filled with despair. "Join us, Tommy," it hissed, its voice like rustling leaves, dead leaves that whispered of forgotten things. "It's much easier here in the dark." The fear rose inside me, threatening to suffocate me, but I knew I had to fight. I kicked violently, freeing my leg from its grasp. The figure recoiled, its expression morphing into rage. Its face twisted into a nightmarish grimace as it lunged again. But just as it reached for me, the orb blazed even brighter, forcing it back, lighting the swirling waters like a beacon of hope. "Keep fighting," I heard a voice call out from somewhere deep inside me. I didn't know if it was my own or a spirit encouraging me, but it pushed me forward. I pulled the oars again, feeling the boat begin to glide toward that glowing chance of survival. As I neared the orb, reality felt like it was slipping away. The waters churned violently, and I could see other dark shapes lurking behind the veil. From every corner of the whirlpool, the shadows grew thicker, eager to pull me into their cold abyss. I saw faint outlines of other lost souls, tangled in pain and regret, their faces stretched in silent screams. "Let the darkness take you," they urged, grasping for me with outstretched hands. "It's too late for hope. You cannot escape." The shadows pressed in closer, their coldness washing over my skin like a sinister tide. I could hear them crying, feel their sorrow wrapping itself around my heart. It was a trap designed to make me doubt, to make me fear slipping away from my own fate. But a small flicker of defiance ignited in my chest. "No!" I screamed at the shadows, the orb's light swirling around me like a shield. "I am still here, and I will fight." The moment I said those words, the orb shot toward me, bursting with energy and illuminating the entire whirlpool. The waters shimmered like stars against the darkened night. Suddenly, the grip of the shadows loosened, and I could feel them retreating, fear clawing at the edges of their resolve. With every ounce of strength left, I lunged for the glowing orb, my fingertips brushing against its radiant surface. A shock of warmth coursed through me. A surge of light and energy filled my veins, and I realized in that instant that this was the true essence of courage, the refusal to give in to the darkness. As soon as I made contact, the orb enveloped me in a brilliant light. I felt a rush of power unlike anything I had ever experienced. The whispers faded, and the figures lurking in the depths shrieked in anger, their hollow voices drowned out by a new sound, the sound of waves breaking against the shore, a return to safety. Suddenly, in a blinding flash, the orb exploded into thousands of shimmering lights, illuminating the night sky like fireworks. The lights spread out, overwhelming the shadows and intertwining with the energy of the lost souls set free. The darkness shrieked in an otherworldly wail, retreating as if burned by the radiant light. I could feel the pull of the whirlpool waning. Spiraling shadows and anguished faces began to unravel. The terrifying figures who had once sought to consume me were now vanishing back into the depths, shrieking as they disappeared into the inky blackness. In that moment of triumph, I felt the weight of exhaustion settle on my shoulders. But I had not yet arrived safely. There was still one final danger lurking behind me. The sea serpent surfaced, its scales shimmering with a mix of fear and admiration. "You've shown strength," it said, its voice booming yet respectful. But the triangle does not forget its debts. There are still more lurking in the darkness, and they will come for you. Realizing that my journey wasn't over, I steadied myself, adrenaline coursing through my body. "I'm not afraid," I declared, the light still swirling around me. "I will protect those who cannot protect themselves." The serpent recoiled slightly, coiling back in surprise at my resolve. "You have made a choice that will forever alter your fate," it warned. "The depths of the triangle will send others after you, expecting you to give in to your fear. Be prepared, Tommy. It will not be so easy again." As the sea calmed, the glowing orbs turned into sparkles, floating around me like lost stars. I gazed at the ocean, realizing it was no longer just a body of water. It was a realm of unending possibility, haunted by things that yearned for freedom and darkness that thrived on despair. With newfound determination, I set the compass. The fear of the unknown grew within me, but so did the strength to confront it. I was no longer just Tommy, a boy fishing in the shadows. I was now a protector, a guardian of light in the depths of darkness. But as I sailed toward the horizon, the flickering light began to dim behind me. I tried to push the unsettled tension from my mind, but the shadows were still whispering, still lurking beneath the waves. Suddenly, a low growl resonated through the water, vibrating beneath the boat. A chill swept through the air, and the water began to ripple unnaturally again. This time, the presence felt bigger, angrier, and much more determined. "You think you can escape that easily?" the darkness taunted, emerging once more from where the light had chased it away. The shadows rose higher and higher, taking shape as monstrous figures twisting in the swirling depths. As they loomed closer, I could see their features, twisted faces twisting into ghastly masks of wretched souls. "You will not leave the triangle," they howled, their voices no longer mere whispers. Instead, they erupted into terrifying roars that echoed across the night, making the very air vibrate with the weight of their anger. I gripped the oars tightly, adrenaline flooding my veins as I prepared for the fight. The creatures surged forward, their forms breaking the surface, revealing row upon row of jagged teeth that dripped with darkness. "I'm not afraid of you," I shouted defiantly, though my voice trembled against the nightmarish reality surrounding me. The struggle for survival was now a fight against my deepest fears, against the very embodiment of despair. The darkness surged forward, and I had to act quickly. With desperation fueling my courage, I steered toward the heart of the creature's mass. "You can't take me," I yelled, my voice steadying. "Light always finds a way to push you back." I pointed toward the stars, now becoming visible once more in the clearing sky. The monster screeched, recoiling from the pointed light of the stars above. I could feel the energy within me growing. The orb had awakened something alive inside me. The knowledge that within every shadow lay the potential for light, and if I had the strength, I could wield that light against the growing depth of darkness. The creatures hesitated, their twisted faces contorting in rage and shock. "Do you think you can summon light without a cost?" One shadow from the depths boomed, its voice like thunder. "Every flicker will cost you something dear." "I've already lost," I shouted back, unyielding. "But I won't lose myself." The orb radiated around me, showering the icy water with glowing warmth. The shadows began to writhe in the light, more agitated. In that moment, I concentrated on the light, bringing it forth to blast the creatures surrounding me. Waves of luminescence shot out in all directions, colliding with the shadows as they shrieked in pain. The light chased them back into the abyss, revealing the depths of their fear. They were afraid of what I had become. As the creatures began to retreat, I felt the exhaustion of my fight wash over me, but I pushed on. I had made a promise to myself to protect the warmth of hope and courage living not only within me, but within every lost soul in the triangle. The water shimmered around me as the creatures screamed and darted back into the depths, leaving only ripples in their place. Yet, the dark beyond was still alive with tension, and I could sense that more horrors lay ahead, countless spirits still trapped and waiting, watching my every move. The serpent broke through the surface once more, its expression a mix of dread and admiration. You are stronger than I expected, but the triangle will continue to test your resolve, it warned, circling my boat with a grace that seemed out of place in the terrifying chaos. I nodded, absorbing its words. I will be ready, I assured, my heart flickering with the light I had summoned. I would not back down, but just as I steeled myself, the water around me began to churn again. The shadows were not finished. From the depths, another creature emerged, more massive and more feral than the last. Its eyes glinted with hunger, its mouth twisted in a sinister grin. You thought you could defeat the darkness? I am the king of the triangle. It roared, a terrifying sound that sent shivers down my spine. Let's see how bright your light burns. In that instant, I realized the real battle was only beginning. I braced myself, the air thickening with a palpable sense of dread. The massive creature rose from the depths, its form twisting like a nightmare made flesh. The waves crashed against the boat, sending sprays of icy water into my face. But I stood my ground, heart racing with adrenaline and fear. Your light is nothing here, it bellowed, each word vibrating through the water, striking like thunder. The ocean roared in response, the darkness swirling around us, hungry and alive. The creature's eyes glimmered with an otherworldly hunger, a deep void that seemed to absorb all hope. In the flickering glow of the radiant orb, I could see its body, scaled and grotesque, each inch a twisted mockery of ancient beasts. Jagged fins sliced through the water like knives as it circled my boat, stalking me with predatory intent. It exuded an aura of power that sent a chill down my spine. The shadows wrapped tightly around the boat, whispering taunts and threats, entangling my thoughts and squeezing out all hope. Come, boy, embrace the darkness, it hissed, its voice dripping with malice, every word curling around me like smoke. Shadows swarmed together, looming taller and wilder as I felt their coldness seep into my bones. You will become one with us. You will know true power. Desperation clawed at my chest as I tried to remain focused. I won't give in, I shouted back, though my voice wavered uncertain. I gripped the oars tightly, feeling the warm glow of the orb pulsing against my skin. The light was my only hope against the overwhelming weight of despair looming over me. With a deep breath, I lifted my eyes, summoning every ounce of strength within me. I stand against you, I declared, unwilling to let fear wrap its tendrils around my mind. Spurred by a surge of defiance, I plunged the oars into the water, redirecting my boat straight toward the creature. As the distance between us closed, I felt an invisible barrier of darkness pushing against me, almost solid, like a cold wall that wanted to swallow my spirit whole. Without thinking, I thrust my hands toward the creature, calling forth the light from the orb. The luminescence erupted in a blinding flash, filling the air with a stream of energy pure and bright. "Begone, you fiend!" I screamed, feeling the power of my words mingling with the brightness of the orb. The creature howled in fury, the sound piercing the air like glass breaking, the shadows shuddering around me. As the light reached it, the monster recoiled, its face ripping into a mask of rage, fangs dripping with dark, viscous liquid. "You think you can illuminate the abyss?" It snarled, lunging forward. The collision was monumental. The energy clashed against the darkness, lighting up the air with beautiful spectral hues as if fireworks had exploded within the storm. But the creature pushed back, its strength overwhelming. The waters churned violently, sending waves crashing around me, threatening to capsize the sea star. I felt myself wavering, caught between the light and the overwhelming tide of darkness. Struggling to stay afloat, I clung tightly to the oars, feeling a twisted fear crash over me like the waves against my boat. Shadows reached up from the depths, slimy tendrils grasping at my legs, threatening to pull me under. But as the light fought against the dark, I remembered the faces of the lost souls I had tried to save. Their gazes haunted me, their silent pleas echoing in my mind. I refused to let this creature take me, to strand me within this watery tomb. "Fight with me," I shouted, hoping my shout carried enough strength to reach those souls, hoping they would understand. The shadows hesitated, as if my voice had broken the spell they were under. "We can be free." In that heartbeat, the darkness seemed to ripple, the tendrils retreating just a fraction. The creature lost its momentum, faltering as the orb's light surged. "No!" It screeched, rage twisting its features into a ghastly display of fury. I pressed harder, feeling the brilliance of the light pushing against the weight of the abyss. I could sense it, the awareness of the other souls that had been lost to this darkness. They were swirling just beneath the surface, trapped within the depths of despair, yearning for release. The thought ignited something within me, a flicker of hope that erupted into a flame. Together, we fought against the shadow. I directed the light toward the creature with all the might I could muster, pouring my heart and soul into it. "This ends now!" I roared, and the orb expanded, its glow overwhelming, filling every corner with warmth and radiance. The creature screeched, its form distorting as the light began to consume it. The shadows writhed in agony, trying to retreat as the light chased them away, illuminating the water around us. What had once been black became vibrant as particles of light danced in every direction, illuminating the darkness, exposing its hidden dread. And then the darkness began to peel away, layer by layer, revealing shapes and forms within. Lost souls emerged from their state of torment, their ethereal bodies encased in the glow, freedom washing over them like a cleansing tide. They reached out, their translucent hands, grasping toward the light, drawn to it, yearning for escape. "Help us," they cried, their voices mingling with the echoes of the creature's anger. "Don't let us go back." I felt their anguish, their sorrow tugging at my heart. "I won't," I promised, pushing my determination into the light. The creature hissed and twisted, thrashing against the radiance that surrounded it. "You'll regret this," it spat, its features contorting, rage driving it into a frenzy. The space around us crackled with tension, the air thick with the clash of conflicting forces. With one final roar, the creature lunged at me, teeth bared, determination burning in its eyes. But I was ready. I faced it down, forcing the light forward with every bit of what I had left. "Be gone!" I yelled, my voice rising above the roar of the storm. The light erupted, an explosion of brilliance that drowned out the darkness. The shadows screamed, the agonizing wails rattling the very core of my being as the orb detonated like a supernova, illuminating everything in its wake. I felt a rush of wind as the creature disintegrated before my eyes, its form breaking apart in a shower of darkness, dissipating into nothingness. As the horrors of the shapeless shadows began to dissolve into shimmering motes of light, the quiet that followed the storm felt surreal. The world around me transformed. Colors blazed against the night sky, stars glittering with hope as I finally felt the weight of chaos lift. But the peace was fleeting, for even as the lights celebrated the victory, I could feel an unsettling chill creeping back into the air. The waters remained restless, swirling with a newfound energy that felt hungry and wild, as if sensing the loss of its master. I glanced around, heart pounding again with anxiety and dread. "What is happening?" I whispered into the night, my voice trembling as I realized the darkness would not be so easily vanquished. Even now, shadows stretched at the edges of my vision, creeping closer, waiting. A low ripple danced along the surface, and I felt it before I saw it. A presence lurking below, a darkness that had not been defeated, merely delayed. As the last bits of the creature faded into the depths, I knew that greater trials awaited me. From somewhere deep within the abyss, a sense of foreboding grew stronger, a pulsing energy that echoed like a heartbeat, its rhythm chaotic and ominous. I felt eyes watching, unseen but very present, a sensation that coiled around my chest. The shadows were not done with me yet. "Tommy," a voice echoed from the depths, soft yet persistent, like a whisper carried by the wind. "You think you have one? You've awakened something far more dangerous." My heart sank, understanding what it meant. The very fabric of the Bermuda Triangle shimmered ominously, a realm where reality bent and shifted, where fears could take form and darkness knew no bounds. I steered the sea star carefully, feeling the atmosphere thickening, the water brewing like a storm ready to break. As I turned to the horizon, preparing to navigate through the waters, the shadows began to coalesce again, whispers swirling close to the lines of my thoughts. "Join us, or pay the price," they chanted, their voices mingling like a haunting melody, echoing endlessly within the depths. This time, I wouldn't merely be fighting a creature of darkness. The very essence of fear and despair was going to test me, and I had to prepare. I took a deep breath, steadying myself for the battle that lay ahead, one against my own doubts and nightmares that now sought to claim me and everything I stood for. The darkness was alive, lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for my moment of weakness to strike. The allure of hopelessness grasped at my heart, but I knew I had to keep it at bay. I was a beacon of light amidst a sea of shadows, a harbinger of change. But would it be enough? The abyss whispered promises of power and safety, swirling through thoughts filled with uncertainty. I felt the wind pick up, roaring like a furious beast as thunder rumbled in the distance. The ocean rose again, waves swelling high, threatening to engulf anything brave enough to challenge its depths. Determined, I steered my course. I could feel the shadows encircling me once more, hungry and relentless, but I won't let them consume my spirit. "I will confront the fears," I whispered, my resolve hardening like steel. "Whatever it takes, I will fight." Suddenly, a tumultuous surge split the waters around me. A massive arm of darkness reached upward, trying to pull me under as I screamed in defiance, fighting against the tendrils wrapping around the boat. "Tommy!" I heard the creature's voice again, echoing like a ghostly lament. "You cannot escape your fate. Surrender." But surrender was not an option. The legacy of those lost souls surged in my heart, the power of light sparking within me. I thrust the oars deep into the swirling waters again, aiming for the heart of darkness. The horizon twisted and faded in the shadows that threatened to engulf me, but I would not falter. The darkness was alive, a force birthed from despair, and it would test everything I had. As the waves heaved around me, I prepared for the final confrontation. A storm was brewing, both within and without, and I was ready to face whatever horrors awaited me in the heart of the Bermuda Triangle. As the waves heaved around me, I prepared for the final confrontation. A storm was brewing, both within and without, and I was ready to face whatever horrors awaited me in the heart of the Bermuda Triangle. Suddenly, the water beneath my boat began to bubble violently, the surface frothing like it was boiling. Shadows twisted and churned, rising from the depths to form grotesque shapes. Each figure was a tortured soul, their faces contorted in despair, their eyes wide with terror as they reached out toward me, pleading silently for help. I felt a cold grip of dread clutch my heart. "What do you want from me?" I yelled, but the only response was a chorus of mournful wails that echoed across the darkened sea. The shadows surged closer, swirling around me like a relentless storm, attempting to drown my spirit in their despair. "Join us, Tommy," they rasped, their voices layered in unison. "You're just like us, lost in our depths. Embrace the darkness." The cries tore at the edges of my spirit, each word a reminder of the fears I had fought so hard to escape. Bright flashes of light flickered from the orb, illuminating the horrific scene, but the brightness was weakening, dimming under the pressure of despair. I could see more clearly now. The souls had once been people like me, trapped in a nightmare, stuck in a loop of hopelessness. Their existence seemed a reflection of my own fears, and it made my skin crawl. One shadow reached out with a hand that was skeletal, fingers elongated and caked with darkness. "We can be one," it hissed, voice slithering through the mist, echoing like a long-lost whisper from the past. "You can feel free. Let go, and we will grant you power beyond your imagination." "No!" I shouted, panic rising. "I won't give in. You're just trying to deceive me." I threw my hands out, summoning the light as fiercely as I could. The orb flared brighter, casting the shadows back momentarily, but they only surged forward again, relentless, hungry for my doubt. As I steered the boat, I noticed a massive form rising in the distance, the shape monstrous and twisted, an abomination born from the darkest depths of the ocean. It breached the surface with a sound like a thunderclap, water cascading down its grotesque frame. The creature was much larger than the one I had faced before, a nightmarish visage of tentacles, scales, and mouths that gaped wide, waiting to swallow me whole. "Do you wish to join your friends?" it growled, voice reverberating through every part of my being, the words pressing heavy against my chest. I could see the many eyes that adorned its form, each gleaming with malice, watching my every move. The boat rocked violently as the maw opened wide, revealing layers of jagged teeth sharper than daggers, dripping with a thick, black ichor. Hoarse laughter echoed from its depths, a cacophony of voices that rose and fell, mocking me. "You are nothing, Tommy. Just a flicker of light in an ocean of darkness." I felt despair threatening to swallow me again, but something within me fought back. "Not this time." The orb pulsed in response, a heartbeat beating in harmony with my own. I could feel the fiery determination coursing through me, igniting a sense of bravery. With newfound strength, I struck the oars into the water, propelling the boat forward with every ounce of determination. "I won't let you take me," I screamed, aiming for the darkness itself, targeting the enormous creature at its center. The darkness roiled and snapped as I drew closer, ethereal voices clawing at my mind with each surge of the waves. "Don't abandon us, Tommy. You can save us. We can be together." "Silence," I hissed, pushing the thoughts away. The shadows slithered along the surface, forming deceptive images of warmth and safety, twisting into familiar faces of friends and family who had long since vanished from my life. "Join them. They are waiting," they called, their words curling around me like vines, tightening, suffocating. But I shook my head, feeling the light within me flare once more, the orb radiating with warmth. "They are not lost. They live," I cried out, and the light burst forth again, illuminating the dark waters, forcing the shadows back momentarily as the monstrous beast let out an ear-splitting roar of fury. The light shone like a beacon in the darkness, a potent force shattering the veil of dread that surrounded me. The entity writhed, reeling from the light as it clawed at its own eyes in an attempt to shield itself. I felt its rage as the waves grew ever larger around me, crashing down as it tried to retaliate. But I pushed through the fear, the shadows still clawing at my ankles, grasping and pulling. "Feel my light," I shouted, my voice cutting through the cacophony like a sword through fog. "You cannot claim my soul." The creatures within the shadows howled in rage as more tendrils lashed out toward me. They lunged with a speed that was almost blinding, surrounding the boat like a tempest. I could see their twisted forms coiling in on themselves, desperately seeking to drag me down. back into the darkness. In a flash of desperation, I shoved the light toward the abyss, aiming to cleanse it of the darkness, gripping it so fiercely. A wave of pure luminescence surged forward, splitting the void as I struck a chord deep within my heart. The connection to every soul lost and every fear faced. "This is my fight," I yelled, the orb flaring brighter than ever as a shockwave erupted outward, colliding with the creature. Darkness and light battled fiercely, the energy colliding like waves against rocks. I felt the strain of the moment, the air thick with desperation and wrath, as the shadows writhed in agony. The creature snarled, its form distorting as light streamed across its skin, each pulse illuminating a multitude of tortured souls within its wake. But the entity was not done yet. With a final snarl, it drew itself back, its massive shadow uncoiling, gathering momentum before lunging forward, aiming straight for me. "You cannot escape your fate," it roared, launching toward the boat, teeth bared, intent on crushing me under its weight. Time slowed as I braced for impact, feeling everything around me erupt in chaos. "No!" I shouted, raising my hands to the heavens, opening my heart to the light in a final act of defiance. The orb responded, collapsing inward before bursting free with an explosive force, a radiant explosion that pierced the darkened sky. In that moment, time itself froze as the shockwaves expanded, blasting the encroaching shadows away, momentarily clearing the boat's path. All around me, walls of darkness disintegrated, revealing flickers of distant stars shimmering like diamonds. The monstrous creature screamed in horror, the sound mingling with the cries of the souls it had claimed, twisting through the night like an anguished lament. The shadows began to disintegrate, revealing glimpses of light shining through as they fell away, leaving nothing but a swirling void behind. But still, I could feel the presence of something greater lurking beyond the veil. With every flicker of my heart, I sensed that this was only the beginning. A deeper darkness waited just beyond. "Tommy, you are not free yet," whispered a voice from the depths, cold and lingering like a ghost's touch. Something coiled around my ankle, pulling at my strength, dragging me closer toward the infinite abyss. The shadows spun around, congealing into terrifying shapes again, their outlines shifting and changing, restless and insatiable. I could hear them whispering once more, their words curling around my thoughts, weaving a fabric of fear that threatened to ensnare my resolve. "You are lost like us, lost as we were," they soothed. "Join us. Reject the light." But I gritted my teeth, feeling the warmth of my heart ignite against the chill that threatened to consume me. I would not surrender. "You're wrong," I shouted defiantly, my voice carving through the dark, solid and firm. "I will find a way out of this." As my hands gripped the oars, the very foundations of the ocean roared in response, tumultuous waves crashing around me. But now, I was not just fighting single creatures or whispers of despair. I was battling the essence of fear itself, the cruel shadows that had ruled over the lost souls for so long. The air grew thick, suffocating, as everything around me trembled with anticipation. Then a terrifying realization struck me like a punch in the gut. In my heart, I knew a far more insidious power watched from the depths, manipulating the shadows, preparing to reclaim what it had lost. With every ounce of strength remaining, I threw myself forward, aiming to penetrate the heart of the abyss, flinging the light into the void like a last beacon of hope. "You will not take me," I screamed, my voice reverberating in the storm. The darkness would not yield easily. Slowly, it began to twist and change, forming a charred mass that loomed ominously in front of me. "You wish to fight?" It breathed, the voice thick with mockery. "You are just a flicker in my eternal night." In the depths of its gaze, I felt an ache of terror curling around my heart, beckoning me to join the shadows, to give in, to succumb to the despair that had entangled so many before. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. A flicker can light a fire, I countered, my resolve solidifying. I was not alone anymore. The echoes of the lost soul surrounded me, their energy entwined within my own. With a surge of desperate hope, I poured every ounce of faith into the light. Together, I shouted, feeling the presence of every soul, their strength lending power. We will rise. The light exploded outward, luminous tendrils spiraling into the dark, lighting up the abyss as their cries of anger turned to shrieks of terror. The shadows recoiled, losing their hold upon me, twisting into an untamed storm, desperate to escape the brightness that threatened to consume them. The monster roared in frustration, its form splitting apart under the intensity of the light, like a shadow fighting against the dawn. The air crackled with energy, tension building until I thought it might shatter, housing the very weight of despair within. But I could feel it slanting in my favor. The light was relentless, a beacon reaching deep into the heart of annihilation. And I knew in that moment that I could overcome this darkness, that I had allies along the way, even unseen, guiding me and drawing strength from the truth that my spirit wouldn't let itself be forgotten. But as the shadows began to fade, a final roar echoed in the chaos, a tremor shaking the very sea beneath me. You think you can escape so easily? The voice jeered with a cruel edge. You will never know peace. I will find you. The waters surged again, crashing as a new wave rose, larger than any I had faced so far, a monstrous tide that threatened to drown everything in its wake. The brilliance of the light flickered, straining against the imminent flood. Just then, a pocket of darkness broke free from the main torrent, a small but potent shadow rising from the depths. It coiled around me with a speed that was almost unreal, aiming directly for my heart, intent on snuffing out the burgeoning light. I gasped, a raw mixture of fear and determination crashing through me. I could feel the essence of the abyss pressing in from every side, threatening to crush my spirit. My heart raced as I struggled to maintain control, the flickering light within me dimming against the weight of despair. But as the shadow drew near, I remembered the faces of those lost in the dark, their silent cries pushing me to fight back. I will not let you take me, I screamed, clenching my fists, focusing all my energy on the radiant orb. The light responded, wild and fierce, transforming into a powerful wave that swept through the encroaching darkness. This is my fight, I bellowed, and for the first time, I felt the shadows pause, if only for a breath. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to stand still, and I took my chance. I leaned into the light, letting it flow through me, illuminating every shadow within, illuminating every twisted part of the darkness that threatened to consume me. My spirit soared, echoing with the souls around me as we surged forward together, an army of light shattering the darkness. But just when victory felt within my reach, I heard it again, a throaty voice echoing from the depths, cold and relentless. You cannot escape your fate, Tommy. You belong to me. The last threads of darkness coiled tighter, clinging to me as I felt myself being pulled down, deeper and deeper into the murky waters where shadows lurked, waiting to consume me. The light flickered against the tide, sputtering as fear tightened its grasp, and I closed my eyes, feeling the pressure rising. In that moment of despair, I realized the fear was not the enemy. It was an echo of the darkness trying to strip away my strength. My pulse quickened as I clung to the thought, the flickers of bravery igniting within me like tiny matches in the dark. I focused deeply, allowing the memories of friends, family, their laughter resonating in my mind, a balm against the horror threatening to consume me. Each recollection fueled the glow within, pushing back against the crushing waves surrounding me, forcing the shadows to retreat, if only for a brief moment. But the darker presence was relentless. It slithered closer, growing bolder, seeking the cracks in my resolve. I felt it probing, reading my fears, eager to exploit any sign of weakness. "You're alone down here, Tommy," it taunted, its voice smooth and chilling, like ice skating over a grave. "Those souls cannot help you. They are lost, and soon you will be too." The chilling realization sank deep. I had ventured into the darkest depths, chasing after shadows that would stop at nothing to devour me whole. Past my defenses, the crushing darkness pooled around me, cold and clammy like the grave, seeping into my bones. Tentacles of despair wrapped around my heart, squeezing until I gasped for breath. I fought against it, pushing images of warmth, laughter, and life back into my mind. "You're wrong," I shouted defiantly, gripping the wooden oars as if they were swords. "I will not succumb to you." With each stroke, I felt like I was paddling through an unseen liquid, thickening like a smog that made every movement a sheer struggle. The weight of dread hung over me, heavy and unbearable. I could see apparitions forming in the mist, lost souls whispering their regrets, their voices intertwining, a ghastly symphony that threatened to drown my courage. "Come join us, Tommy," they pleaded, their voices both soothing and horrific at the same time. "We are one with the dark. There is no need to fight." Faces of those I had loved twisted in sorrowful desperation, their eyes blackened, pleading for an escape that twisted my stomach into knots. I wanted to shield myself from their gaze, but couldn't turn away, fearing that to do so would mean accepting the darkness. Then, from the depths of my vision, a figure stepped forward in brooding shadow, a silhouette emerging from the murky depths. My heart raced as I recognized her, faceless yet familiar, her outstretched hand beckoning. "Help us, Tommy," she whispered, her voice echoing hauntingly around me. "You can save us from this prison. Join me." As she spoke, the water around us shimmered, reflecting moments of joy shared long ago, laughter from family gatherings, whispers of friends lost to time. But alongside those visions came the heavier memories, echoes of despair that chained my conscience, dark secrets I had buried deep, regrets that clawed at my heart. Desperate to break free from the grips of despair, I squeezed my eyes shut and turned my focus inward, chasing away those images. Yet even sealed beneath my eyelids, I could hear their faint echoes like soft, ghostly cries drifting through my thoughts. The shadows pulsed, hungry for my surrender, weaving tales of betrayal, loss, and fear that burrowed deeper into my mind. Suddenly, I felt a fierce tug at my oar, pulling it down and nearly capsizing the boat. I opened my eyes just in time to see a massive dark claw reach up from below, glimmering with malicious intent. The creature was real. Its eyes were like coal, swirling with an unfathomable void as they pierced through the darkness, locking onto me with a fervor that screamed of unyielding hunger. "Give in," it growled, each syllable dripped with malevolence. "You belong in the depths. You're already lost. Do you not feel the pull of the abyss? Relinquish your fight. You will find peace." The edges of my sanity frayed as the claw reached closer, and I could feel the madness tightening around my mind, pressing against my skull like a vice. The shadows leaned in, whispering. In sync, a chorus of temptation promising that if I surrendered now, all would be well. I squeezed my eyes shut again, chanting in my mind, "I will not accept this. I will not fail." But just as I thought I had regained my footing, the landscape around me twisted further. The shadows morphed, becoming grotesque forms, shifting and flickering, each one vying for my attention, attempting to draw me into their chaos. I felt my heart racing in tandem with the rhythm of their whispers, a dark lullaby steeped in despair. "Come closer, Tommy," they cooed, their tones silky as silk yet heavy with a toxic allure. "Why struggle against what you desire? Let's show you the truth, a truth that holds power and darkness. You could be so much more." Clenching my jaw, I forced the visions away, but desperation clawed at my resolve. My strength was waning as shadows rippled through the air, dancing around the boat, seeking to entrap me in their web of deceit. I could feel their whispers flooding my mind, promising strength, power, everything I had ever desired. If only I yielded. Why fight it? You have no chance against the abyss, Tommy. They hissed, voices blending into a cacophony that swirled around me. Surrender to the darkness and understand the true nature of your existence. But as those temptations wrapped around me, something ignited deep within. It was the recollections of battles fought on the shores of bravery against unfathomable fears. Memories of light, laughter, and warmth burst into my mind. A sudden blaze chasing away the suffocating darkness, lighting up the night. No! I screamed, feeling the power of connection surge between the lost souls and myself, creating an aura of light that defied the shadows. I am no longer afraid. The creature recoiled, the once invincible claw hesitating as the shadows shrieked in response, a dissonant wail reverberating throughout the night air. The magic of hope gusted through, roaring with the strength of all the souls trapped, awakening their spirits alongside my own. Even as the darkness writhed beside me, struggling helplessly against the surge of light. But then, the monstrous presence began to gather itself, a swirling cyclone of fury. It lashed out with unbridled rage, its form expanding, darkness intertwining at its edges like a vortex, hell-bent on consuming me completely. The air grew thick and suffocating, filled with the chilling realization that the struggle would be greater than I had anticipated. "Do not fight me, Tommy," it roared, its fury sheer and overwhelming, a low growl vibrating in the very water beneath me. "You think you possess strength? You are merely a flickering candle in an infinite night. I will crush your light, and you will know despair, your true fate." But the warmth of the orb swelled around me, affirming my purpose, a fire igniting flames of bravery within, allowing the light to push against the encroaching dark, despite the chilling threat trailing behind. "You may try," I retorted, gripping the oars tightly, channeling my resolve into each stroke, the currents clashing between light and dark. As I surged forward, the darkness recoiled momentarily, creating an opening through the twisting shadows that surrounded me. I am not lost. I will fight for every single soul who was taken, I yelled, defiance breaking through as I propelled myself deeper into the heart of the shadowy storm. The clash was brutal. The force of darkness pushed against me with tenacity, every ounce of despair trying to pull me backward. The cold clawed at my skin, whispering promises of peace and power, if only I'd give in, surrender to the shadows. Then came a sound that rattled me to my core. The deep rumbling of thunder echoed through the air as if the very ocean was lamenting my struggle. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the darkened surroundings with stark flashes, revealing fleeting images of faces half submerged, trapped in torment. "Help us, Tommy," they cried, desperate, fading into the shadows with each passing moment. Their voices tugged at my heart, urging me to act, to break free from my restraints before it was too late. "I won't abandon you," I shouted, the orb responding with a potent glow, illuminating the water, breaking through the clouds of despair and confusion. The darkness drew back, squirming away from the light, but the beast at its center remained, eyes gleaming with hatred. The creature lunged, massive jaws snapping just inches away from the boat, sending desperate chills across my skin. "You cannot win this battle," it snarled, breath hot and rancid, wrapping around me like a poisonous fog. "Join the shadows, or face your end." The fear clawed at the back of my neck as I steered the boat. Uncertainty swirled within like an eddy, threatening to pull me down, deeper into despair. But just then, the cries of the forgotten echoed within me, their desperate hopes threading through my heart, urging me to stay strong. "I will not yield," I roared defiantly, drawing on the strength of those I had loved and lost, channeling their voices as a shield against the encroaching dark. The light surged forth again, whipping through the air with renewed vigor, piercing through the abyss, illuminating what lay beyond. To my surprise, I felt a warmth flicker within the shadows, the tiniest breath of hope awakened by my defiance. For each pulse of light, another shadow writhed, revealing the twisted forms of souls flickering like candle flames, soft but resilient. The crumbling darkness began to loosen around me, revealing glimpses of torment and pain, and I realized that each light I encountered wasn't just flickering in despair. They were waiting for their moment to rise again, to break free from the chains of darkness. The pulse of my heart drummed through the chaos, fueling the light, and as I rode with fierce determination, I started to gain ground against the darkness that had sought to quench my spirit. With every stroke, it felt like I was running toward the last vestige of hope, toward breaking the ties that bound the shadows, toward reuniting with those who had been lost. Together, I shouted again, feeling the energy of the soul swirl around me in time with my heartbeat, a chorus of resilience bolstering me in my fight against the night. We will rise. With a sudden surge of determination, I pushed forward, colliding with the darkness, the tension echoing the final antics of the storm surrounding us. Light radiated outward, stretching into the abyss, cascading like an unstoppable tide. But the creature was enraged. With an angry howl, it lashed out again, monstrous jaws snapping with the intention to silence my flame once and for all. I braced myself for impact, knowing I had to hold my ground. I had to break this cycle of despair. In that moment, the water around me surged again, drawing me close once more to the pulsating darkness. Anxiety screamed through me, echoing the monstrous growls. Would this be where my journey came to its catastrophic end? With one last defiant push, I raised the orb high, the light flaring around me as walls of light swept forth, crashing against the dark tide, amplifying my voice until it pierced through. I am not yours. I choose to fight. As the tendrils of shadow sunk back, recoiling from the bright light, I felt hope surge through my veins, enveloping me, merging with the spirit of the lost souls I had vowed to save. A luminous pulse rippled through the depths, driving back the encroaching dark, burrowing into the very core of the creature that sought to claim me. But even as victory felt imminent, I could feel the growl deepen, darkness pooling and swirling around me again, like a returning tide determined to reclaim what it had lost. Foolish child, the beast shrieked from within the shadows, its anger erupting with a force that shook the ocean beneath. You think you can escape your fate? You will belong to the abyss. The shadows howled and surged as they struck in unexpected waves, roaring toward me in a furious tide that twisted and churned with unrelenting force. I felt part of my courage weaken, that familiar, creeping sense of hopelessness wrapping around my heart. Yet somehow I found my voice amidst the chaos. I refused to give in. I yelled, and to my surprise, the light began to glow even brighter, responding to my will with fierce determination, a torrent of purity clashing with the dark tides threatening to swallow me whole. The luminous orb shimmered like a lighthouse beacon, guiding me with reassurance against the snarling entity hurling itself toward me. I am not alone, I cried out, summoning the energy of every soul trapped within this torment. We are here. We will rise again. With a vibrant surge, the light broke through, illuminating the waters around me in a burst of color that sent the shadows scattering. I could see their awful faces contorting, anguish written upon them, voices rising in both sorrow and fury, desperate to reclaim me. But as I held onto the light, the shadows writhed and twisted violently, their forms bubbling like dark oil seeping through cracks. Whispering voices crescendoed into a terrifying choir, each note dripping with malice, desperate to ensnare me in their web of despair. Do you really believe that light can save you? They taunted, their eyes glowing like embers in the dark, flickering with malevolence. You are surrounded by darkness, Tommy. Every heartbeat you waste brings your end closer. The boat rocked dangerously as the magical force radiated outward, illuminating grotesque faces that flickered in and out of sight. Twisted mouths opened wide in silent screams, eyes wide and staring, as if they were witnesses to horrors I could scarcely imagine. The water roiled beneath me, waves slapping against the wooden sides, echoing the chaos brewing in the depths. I forced myself to look closer. The shadows revealed figures hooked like fish, trapped in the clammy embrace of the darkness, a scene from some forgotten nightmare. Their faces were mere remnants of the people they had once been. Some looked like friends I had lost, while others wore expressions I couldn't place but felt aching in my chest. "Help us, Tommy," they cried in unison, their voices merging into a mournful symphony. "You can free us. Join us, and we will be whole again." The anguish of their cries clawed at my heart. It was a familiar song of sorrow, and a part of me wanted to believe them. An icy sensation crept up my spine as their hands reached out, ghostly fingers brushing against the sides of the boat, seeking an anchor, a lifeline in the darkness. "Why cling to the light?" They wept, their pleading growing more desperate. "It will only hurt you. Submit to the shadows, and you will find peace." The boat lurched again, and suddenly I felt the frigid grip of water reach for my ankles, the tentacles of despair wrapping tighter as the darkness threatened to drag me below. The shadows slithered together, forming a solid mass, swirling around the vessel with an insatiable hunger, the surface of the water churning like a breeding ground for nightmares. "Feel it, Tommy." The creature's voice emanated from the depths, smooth as silk but laced with venom. "Feel the power of darkness. Your refusal to submit only delays your fate." I squeezed my eyes shut, shaking my head vigorously as if to shake off their influence. "No!" I screamed, pushing against the fear that bore down on my spirit. My heart raced, and I concentrated fully on the orb of light, pouring all my remaining strength into it, desperate to hold on, desperate to find a way through the encroaching night. But then I heard it again, a rustle, a sharp intake of breath from somewhere beneath the waves. The sensation sent chills racing across my body, freezing me in place as I peered into the blackness. The water swirled with unnatural fervor, rising higher and higher as it began to pulse. The shadows coiled together, forming something grotesque, an elongated figure that surged toward me like a serpent. I could see its scales glistening in the faint light, a glimmer of dark power before my very eyes, a glimpse of something eldritch, incomprehensible. It drew closer, eyes flaring with a wicked hunger, twin depths of blackness that promised obliteration. I gasped, the air swirling with cold dread as the creature lashed out, striking the boat with a force that nearly sent me tumbling into the depths. The hull cracked under its might, wood splintering as I clung to the sides for dear life. "It's too late, Tommy," it growled, the voice wrapping around me, thick and suffocating. "You cannot escape me. Your light will be extinguished." Splashes erupted as shadows rose up from the depths, soaring into the air to grip the edges of the boat, pooling like fog around me, cold and clammy against my skin. Panic surged through my veins. "No!" I shouted, the sound swallowed by the unnatural roar of the storm. "You can't take me. I will fight until my last breath." The air felt thicker, oppressive, carrying the palpable weight of ancient sorrows as the darkness closed in, smothering my spark of light and leaving me clutching at fading embers. I could feel the shadows pressing against my chest now, like hands trying to pull me down into the abyss. "Join us," the roiling darkness whispered softly, wrapping around my heart like a serpent squeezing tighter with every breath. "Become part of us, part of our endless night. There is no other choice." Just then, a vision struck me, shadows consumed by a whirlwind of despair, faces I recognized, one by one licking their wounds from past failures, and I was caught in this cycle, watching hopelessly as light flickered out for the last time. "Submit to your nightmares, Tommy," the voices echoing in my mind. Their tones twisted from pleading to mocking, insidious tendrils of despair swirling around me. Suddenly, the boat rocked violently again as another monstrous claw lunged forward, crashing violently against the side, sending water cascading over the edges, soaking the decks, filling the air with an acrid scent like burning memories. I struggled to keep balance, my heart thundering in my chest. every inch of me screaming to escape this grasp of shadow that wanted to extinguish my very soul. The piercing screams grew louder, drowning out reason, each one laced with desperation, clawing at my mind, pulling at my weaknesses. "Do you feel it?" the creature growled, its presence looming over me like a dark cloud, a heavy weight settling in. "This is your truth. This is your fate. Let go of the light." And just like that, the glowing orb dimmed, flickering in response to the weight of the shadows crashing down, a fight against the inevitable. I felt despair threatening to engulf me, the icy coldness washing over me, erasing whatever small flames I had left. But from deep within, I gathered what little courage remained, steeling my heart against the relentless tide. "You do not define me," I shouted, my voice fierce like a tempest. "You will not take my light." With a primal roar, I summoned every ounce of energy, feeling the pulse of the lost souls, their collective spirit igniting the orb once more. The shadows recoiled, momentarily stunned by the brightness that radiated from me, but I knew I had to act fast. "I will not let you claim me," I yelled, lifting the orb high above my head, channeling the power of every flickering flame of hope I could muster. But the shadows shifted, gathering strength as they reformed, merging into a monstrous entity, towering above me, a swirling mass of darkness that seethed with rage. "You think you can resist forever?" it hissed, the voice bellowing with a dissonant echo. "You cannot escape the darkness that rests within you. Surrender." The air thickened as the creature's presence pulsated with malice, clawing at the recesses of my mind, teasing out my doubts and fears, the very monsters I had tried to forget. "Your light is but an illusion," it spat, slivers of venom dripping from its words. It lunged again, the shadows clawing out, grasping for me, seeking to ensnare my spirit within their eternal nightmare. In that harrowing moment, I felt the darkness enveloping me, feeling hot breath against my skin as silvery tendrils grasped my arms, pulling tighter, constricting any sense of escape. The vessel shook violently, desperation coursing through me like poison. "Fight!" I urged myself, a mantra against the inevitability. "Fight! Fight! Fight!" Just then, a blinding pulse erupted from the orb, surging with radiant energy as if sensing my desperation and offering me one last chance to wield its power. The light surged through me like wildfire as I pushed back against the overwhelming tide, feeling its warmth spreading through every fiber of my being, invigorating my spirit against the encroaching dark. "We are not alone!" The battle cry burst forth from my lips, fueled by every soul trapped in the abyss. The orb pulsed brightly, an echo of every flickering flame yearning to escape the night, the light erupting forth in a brilliant cascade that shot through the darkness, illuminating even the darkest corners. The waves snapped and crackled around me as the intense light burst forth like a sunrise breaking through a long winter's night. But the shadows would not relent. They lashed out, shrieking as the boundaries between realms tore, revealing twisted faces expressing anguish. Lost souls nearing the edge, drifting between fear and hope, longing for freedom while shackled by darkness. "End this madness," the creature demanded, a desperate growl scraping through the air. "You are bound to the dark. Just accept it." The shadows pulsed again, rising in a powerful tide, ready to engulf me whole. But I felt something shift within the very essence of the light, a flicker of connection, an understanding of the battle we faced. "I choose light," I declared fiercely, embracing the blaze that now burned bright within me, forcing back the dark waves that surged forth. In that moment, as the shadows lunged to claim their prize, the orb erupted violently, casting away the darkness, illuminating every crevice of fear and despair. The shockwaves sent shadows howling into the void, their whispered promises of surrender drowning under the force of the light. But the creature clawed back, furious and relentless, gathering its strength for one last strike. "You will regret this defiance, Tommy," it shrieked, rage tinged with a sense of loss. You will never escape the pull of the shadows. I stood firm, breathing deeply, feeling the energy of the lost souls surging beside me, and gritted my teeth against the roar of despair that filled the air. This was not just my fight. It was theirs too, woven together through the strands of pain and hope. With one last surge of will, I raised the orb high, letting it shine its truth against the gaping maw of the abyss. Light will always find a way, I roared, feeling the brightness intensify, cascading outward in a radiant wave. As the dark creature lunged, the light met it head-on, blinding and brilliant, illuminating the shadows that flickered within, revealing the agony of every soul it had consumed. The dark form twisted and writhed as the light pierced through, cracking it like glass, shards of despair bursting and scattering as it let out a primal roar of anguish. And in that blinding moment, hope flooded through the fray, seeping into the nooks and crannies of lost souls, emboldening them. "We are more than our darkness," I shouted, feeling the swell of energy unite, sparking a wave of resistance against the ancient creature that had held us all captive for too long. The shadows began to break, collapsing under the weight of true light as the creature howled, retreating into the depths, its power waning. But beneath the waves, tendrils darted out, reaching for me in a final, desperate grasp. I felt the familiar cold of despair gnawing at my resolve as the darkness shot from my heart, closing in tighter, and I realized this was not the end of the battle. "Stay focused," I urged myself, trying to keep the fear at bay as I stood my ground against the creature's final strike. "We are not lost. We are not alone." But the whispers crept back in, taunting, promising peace, a sweet surrender. "You will never be free. We will always return." Their wails grew louder, agony swirling around me like a storm of noise, suffocating and blinding. Darkness clawed at the edges of my mind, trying to pull me down again. Each pulse of my heart felt like it was sinking with the dark, a terrifying rhythm urging me to let go. Just then, I saw a light breaking through the mist, a faint shimmer in the distance, growing stronger with every passing beat, a beacon calling me back from the brink. I grasped onto it with fervent hope, locking onto its warmth as the shadows swarmed mercilessly, clawing ever closer. "Not today!" I screamed, clenching my fists and channeling every ounce of strength I had left. "I will not fall." With that conviction burning bright, I reached deep inside, grounding myself in purpose. The orb surged, swirling with a vibrant energy that felt connected to my very soul, guiding me forward like a sentinel warding off darkness. Suddenly, there was a shift, a cracking as the shadows warped and thrashed in desperation, tugging at me with unholy hands. "Relinquish your will," the creature roared, its last desperate grasp laced with furious regret. But I would not relent. I could feel the energy rampant around me, wrapping me in a blanket of hope, illuminating the depths of my own fears like a torch pushing back the shadows. "You are nothing," I spat defiantly, eyes burning with unyielding intensity. "You will never break me." In that decisive moment, I thrust the orb forward, piercing through the dark with every. In that decisive moment, I thrust the orb forward, piercing through the dark with every ounce of strength I had left. The light erupted outward, a fierce explosion that shattered the smothering shadows, sending them screeching like bats fleeing the dawn. The darkness writhed, twisting and curling in desperate attempts to escape the bright pulse, a cacophony of agonized whispers drowning out all reason. I felt the cold fingers of despair clawing at my back, pulling me toward the depths below, dragging me closer to their realm. "You belong to us," they hissed, voices blending in a haunting chorus, filling my ears with chilling certainty. Every ounce of regret and sorrow rushed forward to envelop me, each memory a tendril of darkness trying to tether itself to my essence. I could see them, faces twisted in agony, lost moments that I had tried to bury, surfacing like rotten memories in a festering wound. It was unbearable, I could feel myself teetering on the edge of despair, a precipice that promised to swallow me whole. No! I gasped, fighting against the pain that threatened to break me. I clenched my eyes shut, focusing on the light radiating through the haze, the warmth wrapping around me like a guardian spirit. It pulsed steadily, urging me to resist, reminding me of the countless souls trapped in the darkness, still lurking and yearning to break free. Then, out of the abyssal depths, a figure started to emerge. One of the damned, cloaked in shadows, its elongated limbs twisting and thrashing against the beams of light, as if the brightness was acid against its skin. It opened its mouth, and the scream that escaped was like nails on a chalkboard, scraping against my sanity and filling the air with a sickly sweet dread. "No, you can't," it croaked, a face barely recognizable, features gnawed and rotted as if centuries of torment had etched deep lines of despair into its essence. "You don't understand what lies beneath. You shouldn't fight it." I felt a shiver run through me, not just from the creature's horrific visage, but from the familiarity that gnawed at the edges of my memory. And then I remembered. "You were my friend," I shouted, horror dawning on me as the shadows peeled back to reveal Marcy, her eyes wide with fear, pupils dilated glossy, like shattered marbles reflecting only pain. "What have they done to you?" "Join us, Tommy," she moaned, her voice a mix of anguish and seduction, each word dripping with sadness. "We can escape together. Embrace the void. It will be peaceful." "No, I won't do this," I shouted, trying to push the overwhelming tide of grief away, my heart breaking for her. I could see the humanity flickering in her gaze, but it was tainted by something darker, something primal that sought to consume both her and me. My resolve tightened as I took a step back, shaking my head. "I can't lose you. Fight it, Marcy." The shadows around her twisted tighter, distorting her form, creating grotesque appendages that crawled toward me, hungry and insatiable. "You don't know the truth," she screamed, trembling as the tendrils whipped about, exposing the horrors that lay just beneath the surface. "The shadows give us strength. They set us free from the pain of the light." I felt a wave of anguish wash over me as I watched my friend disintegrate into the darkness, her face flickering like a dying flame. But even as despair seeped into my heart, I remembered the light, the connection I felt with the souls fighting alongside me, their flickers of defiance urging me on. I could not let her slip away. Summoning the last of my strength, I directed the orb at the dark mass roiling around her, feeling the intensity build. "You will not take her," I cried out, the orb flaring brighter, casting away the shadows that wrapped around Marcy. The air crackled, charged with energy as the beams clashed, sending shockwaves through the depths. But as I focused on her, the shadows howled in rage, the temperature dropping. "Foolish boy," they screeched, the once dulcet voices rising in a maddening pitch that reverberated through me. "You think you can save her? The dark will always consume the light." In that moment, I felt my resolve waver as icy tendrils encircled my legs, pulling me downward, dragging me closer to the murky depths, my breath hitching in my throat. "No, not like this." Panic surged within, threatening to collapse my will. My heartbeat surged with the frantic rhythm of impending doom. But just when I thought I would succumb, a glimmer ignited in the corner of my vision, a radiant shimmer that pierced the darkness, the remnants of hope dancing at the edge of despair. Somehow, I felt a connection to the warm glow, as though it was alive and part of me, a reminder of every battle fought against the encroaching terror. I turned my attention back to Marcy, her form flickering between shadow and light, desperate to break free from the malice that held her captive. "We can fight this together," I shouted, reaching out, my hands stretching toward her, fingers trembling with determination and pain. "Remember who you are." Her gaze flickered, recognition sparking in her once dull eyes, a flickering ember of her true self desperately gnawing at the chains of darkness. "Tommy," she whispered, voice quaking as the shadows hesitated, wraith-like hands drawing back. uncertain under the brilliant illumination. "This way, Marcy," I urged, feeling the protective encasing of light around me, bolstering my courage as I pulled her nearer with every desperate, strained heartbeat. "We can become whole again." But the shadows recoiled, angry and furious, circling us like vultures, attempting to pull her back into their realm of decay. "You will lose her again," the darkness howled, tendrils snapping and curling dangerously, one striking me across the face, leaving a burning mark where it had touched. I winced, stumbling back as the pain seared like fire, but the light emanating from the orb pulsated in response, feeling filled with all the souls that had cried out in anguish, buoyed by their energy. Gritting my teeth, I pushed against the pain, determination coursing fiercely within. "No!" I bellowed, lifting the orb even higher, its radiance casting a warm glow that pushed back the frigid air crawling in. "Marcy!" I cried, "Take my hand!" The light shimmered, flaring brilliantly, reflecting a kaleidoscope of colors that sought to bind us together in a tapestry of hope. But even as I reached, I felt a shudder of dread course through me, a rumbling beneath the waves that foretold a monstrous retaliation brewing beneath. Then the dark entity surged forward with renewed fury, gathering strength as it struck like a serpent, mouth gaping open wide to unleash a swath of blackness that threatened to extinguish everything within its reach. A wave of despair washed over me, but it felt different, deeper, more pervasive, swirling like a storm that churned the very essence of hope spiraling down. As the shadows cracked forward, Marcy's voice grew desperate, just on the brink of surrender. "Tommy, please. It's too late for me. Just leave. Save yourself." "No," I shouted, fighting against the tide, holding on with everything I had. "I won't abandon you. You're not lost." But the shadows howled louder still, trying to drown out my words, a terrifying cacophony promising eternal darkness and betrayal, like a trap closing in around me as the insidious presence sought to erase our bond. As the darkness bore down on us, the ground beneath began to quake violently, waves crashing as if the very ocean was rebelling against the creature's heartless grip. The boat swayed like a leaf caught in the tempest, wild waves lapping at the edges, and I felt myself being pulled closer to the edge, the very fabric of reality stretching, threatening to tear. "Remember the light," I shouted, though my own voice trembled under the pressure of the unyielding shadows. "We are stronger together. Fight." And with that, I plunged the orb deep into the mass of darkness, the vibrant glow illuminating the twisted tendrils for just a moment, revealing the true horror beneath. But the shadows were relentless, swarming like a living entity, twisting and churning, clawing to get to me. And with each passing second, my grip on reality felt more tenuous. The fury of the dark concentrated like a hurricane, striking the boat again with force, causing it to lurch violently, splintering wood around me, shards flying through the air. With a terrible crack, I felt the boat begin to break apart, splintering under the pressure of the dark. Fury as icy clawed hands reached up to snag at my legs, dragging me inexorably toward the abyss. "Fight, Marcy. You have to fight," I urged, my heart gripped with terror as everything began to slip away, the shadows closing in on all sides. I could see her, my friend, barely holding on, darkness wrapping around her throat, fingers clawing up her arms, struggling between the rising tide of shadows and the flicker of hope. "You have to choose," I screamed, the words ripping from my throat as I felt myself slipping, all hope threatened by the chaos that threatened to swallow us whole. Suddenly, a brilliant flash surged from the orb, filling the air with an unbearable resonance of light that burst forth with such force that it washed over everything like a cleansing flood. "Choose Marcy. Choose the light." The shadows recoiled, howling in pain as the radiance grew, the figures writhing, twisted faces contorting in agony, revealing the torment beneath, their shadows betraying their true horrors. I felt surge after surge of energy coursing through me, emboldening every inch of my heart, lighting every corner of my mind as the memories of friendship and love fueled the flame of hope. Marcy blinked through the dark haze, her features flickering like a faulty light bulb struggling against the pull of despair. "Tommy," she whispered, and for a fleeting moment, I saw the girl I used to know, her eyes alive with determination, fighting against the shadows gnashing at her fragile state. With a strangled cry, she wrenched herself free from their grasp, bursting forth toward the light, arms reaching, fingers desperate to grasp the unyielding brightness I offered. "Tommy," she rallied, and in that moment, I could see the true Marcy fighting to break free, piercing through the darkness, her own strands of hope weaving with my own. The shadows writhed in fury, their whispers collapsing into a furious roar as they clutched desperately at the light enveloping us. "You will pay for this defiance," they screeched, the darkness acting as a living, breathing entity, twisting and tearing at the bonds of our friendship as it symbolized everything they feared. Determination surged within me, igniting the air, and as the tendrils of shadow swarmed, I pulled Marcy closer, intertwining my fingers with hers, grounding her back into my realm. "Together," I shouted, our voices entwining, mingling with the power of light as we embraced the freedom promised by our connection. The orb flared brightly, a magnificent explosion of color cutting through the haze, dispelling the darkness like fog in the presence of sunlight. The shadows shrieked as the luminescence pierced the heart of the darkness, revealing the hideous faces trapped within, morphing, twisting back into the haunting apparitions of lost souls that hovered on the brink of despair. In a sudden rush, a wave of radiant energy surged forth from us, crashing through the dark like a bold tidal wave, igniting the hidden fires of those trapped within. "We are stronger together," I repeated, letting the power of our united spirits wash over everything, illuminating the darkness and sending shockwaves deep into the void. But still, even as the shadows began to fracture, I sensed the creature writhing beneath us, regrouping, coiling in on itself, furious and relentless. "This is not over, foolish mortals," it warned, the voice dripping with malice, venomous whispers hissing through the air as I felt the very fabric of time and space begin to twist again. "Yet it will end tonight," I determined, swinging the orb with all the strength left in my bones, watching as light splintered the darkness, exposing every hidden nightmare within. The shadows scattered, flailing in horror, but even as they retreated, I could feel their hungry gaze, always lingering, ready to pounce at the first sign of weakness. But together with Marcy, we pressed on, beyond the palpable darkness. But even as we soared toward what felt like possible victory, pools of shadow remained, gathering in the corners, swelling like a tide ready to crash down once more, a constant reminder of the battle still raging beneath. "Don't look back," Marcy whispered, trembling, and I nodded, fueling the spark of courage that surged within me, every remaining ounce of strength pooling into one final thrust. With one last cry, I thrust the orb deep into the darkness. With one last cry, I thrust the orb deep into the darkness, desperation fueling every ounce of my strength as it surged forward. The radiant light exploded upon contact, illuminating the void like a supernova, casting eerie shadows across the tortured faces of lost souls. The howls of the creature echoed through the expanding brilliance, resounding with rage and tortured agony. But the shadows did not disperse easily. They writhed and coiled around the light, hungry for the radiant energy that threatened to consume them. Dark tendrils lunged toward me, snapping like whips, their edges jagged and sharp. I could almost feel the energy sapping from the orb, the warmth of hope dwindling as they sapped at my resolve. "Tommy!" Marcy screamed, her voice cut through the chaos like glass, filled with fear and determination. I could see her struggling against the darkness, her hands grasping for the light, fingers brushing against the cold tendrils trying to pull her under. "Don't let it win. Fight!" As I stared at her, the orb pulsed in response, each heartbeat syncing with my own desperate resolve. I couldn't let her fall into the silent grip of the shadows. Summoning every bit of willpower left, I yanked the orb back, gathering all the remaining light into one concentrated point, envisioning every glimmer of hope that existed in the darkness. The shadows twisted in agitation, sensing the shift in power, organizing into monstrous forms that loomed larger and more grotesque than before. "You think you can escape?" One of them hissed, its voice slithering like smoke around me. "You cannot destroy your own despair. It will always return." I felt icy fingers brushing against the back of my neck, chilling me to the core. The shadows gathered, swirling frantically, mocking my energy and forming shapes that stung with familiarity. Faces I had once known twisted in torment, their features melting into one another, a horrifying amalgamation of all my failures and regrets. I recoiled as they surged forward, a cacophony of laughter ringing in my ears, a haunting chorus that threatened to drown me in palpable dread. "You will join us," they shrieked, hands reaching out, pulling closer. It felt as if the air thickened like mud, each word a weight dragging my spirit lower. Panic rose in my chest as I felt tendrils wrapping around my ankles, yanking me toward them, their grasp drawing me deeper into their hungry embrace, whispering promises of oblivion. "Don't listen." Marcy's voice jolted me back to reality, and I realized I was teetering on the brink of surrender. Fighting against the grass that sought to curl around my heart, I drew from the glowing orb, a last flicker of brilliance igniting something deep inside me. She was counting on me. They were all counting on me. With a primal scream, I hurled the orb into the tendrils that encircled us, its light exploding in a radiant flash that cracked the air. The shadows flinched, twisting and hissing, as the brightness washed over them like holy water on a demon. The faces contorted in horror, the echoes of their anguished cries rising like a storm as they tried to shield themselves from the onslaught of light. "Now!" I shouted, channeling every ounce of power from the orb into the darkness, feeling the rush of liberation as I pulled Marcy toward me, her fingers gripping mine fiercely. Together, we can break this cycle. But even as the light brightened, a clawing darkness rushed in, swirling low, trying to snuff out that hope, nipping at the edges like a wraith seeking to reclaim its prey. "You think you can defy us?" the shadows hissed, their voices a dissonant symphony of despair and malice. "Pain, regret, and anger are forever yours." As the depths thrashed, I felt the energy from the orb begin to flicker, a violent tremor surging through it, like the heartbeat of a beast ready to awaken. I focused on Marcy, her features hardening with determination as she strained against the pain, and I could see the shadows trying to reclaim her. Strands of darkness lashed at her throat, choking out her breath, their grip trying to silence her defiance. "Do not let go!" I screamed, feeling the connection between us grow stronger, illuminating the darkness even more. "Fight back!" But just as the light began to swell around us, the creature struck with a ferocity that echoed through my bones. An immense force hit like a tidal wave, crashing down upon us, throwing everything into chaos. I lost my grip on Marcy, her shout cut off as the dark surged, swallowing her voice, the shadows sucking her down into the depths. "I won't let you take her." I lunged forward, casting the orb deeper into the churning mass of shadows, yet it just splintered against the beast like waves against the rocks. The darkness slid back, revealing a vicious maw, teeth glinting with an unnatural hunger, a cavern of despair poised to devour everything in its path. "Foolish child," the creature shrieked through the cacophony, its laughter an unsettling melody laced with malice. "All will fall into my abyss eventually. Join them. Let me show you the sweet relief of nothingness." A sense of dread curled in my gut as anxiety rose, fear gnawing at my will, threatening to pull me into their depths. They were right, were they not? Every moment was a struggle against the memories, feelings of guilt hanging like chains around my heart. But then I thought of Marcy, of her struggle, her power, of the flicker I saw in her eyes, and something deep inside ignited. Light glimmered in response, growing stronger when juxtaposed against the darkness, a defiance that thrummed in the air around me. "Enough!" I shouted into the void. The shadows twisted and surged with anger, but I pushed against their rage, the light in my hands piercing through each vile tendril, illuminating the faces of the lost, revealing their pain. "Tommy's!" Marcy's voice cracked through the haze, a small flicker in the storm, grounding me again. I glimpsed her battling against the darkness, her form flickering like a candle in a tempest, and that flame became my focus. "No!" I shouted, the light flaring into a brilliant explosion that shook the shadows. "You will not take her. You cannot have her." With a surge of energy, I lunged again, pushing the orb deeper, willing it to burn away every trace of the creature's grasp. Suddenly, the shadows began to fray, caught in the radiant brilliance, unraveling like fabric torn by an unseen hand. The faces of the damned wailed, their cries echoing as threads of dark dissipated into the air, the creature's form reeling, faltering under the weight of our light. But just when it seemed as if we were victorious, the darkness coiled again, roaring back with insatiable hunger. I could feel it gathering around my legs, the grip lessening only to consolidate in a massive, undulating shape, like a serpent preparing to strike. "You cannot resist forever," it spat, bitterness hanging in the air as it lunged toward me, snapping jaws wide to engulf me in an eternity of darkness. "Tommy!" Marcy screamed, the sound breaking through the madness as shadows rushed at her, clutching and dragging, pulling her away, her form slipping into the depths as I felt the unspeakable pull of despair clawing at my heart. "Fight it! I'm here!" I shouted as I felt the shadows pulling tighter around me. My breath caught, the walls of darkness closing in like a vice, trying to snuff out the last remnants of our hope. But I poured everything I had left into the orb, focusing on the souls around us, the eternal fight, resilience weaving a powerful tapestry of light through the darkness. The shadows screamed, and then I poured forth my very spirit into the orb, shaking with the effort, blasting it with everything I had. "This ends now!" I roared, and with that, a wave of light surged forth, shattering the creature's form, rattling it to the core, its visage melting away like wax in a fire. It shrieked, the sound reverberating deep within my bones, and I could feel the very fabric of reality around us pulsing, shaking, a splintering echo as shadow met radiant light. For a moment, everything seemed to hover in suspension, the very air drawn taut, echoing with the promise of release. But just as I felt the darkness falter, the shadows pulled one last time, gnashing and clawing, wrapping around me like a blanket of despair. The sudden tightening felt like death's fingers curling around my neck, squeezing, wanting to snuff out the pulse of life I clung to. In that instant of pure panic, I knew the final confrontation was at hand, my heart pounding as I held a single, desperate thought. I cannot give in. The strings of darkness may have taken so much, but our bond, my love for Marcy, the hope that had forged our connection, shone fiercely like a star in the darkest night. "Marcy!" I screamed, feeling the brightness surge as I caught one last glimpse of her, eyes wide and shining, a beacon of defiance against the encroaching dark. And as the darkness tried to consume me, I reached deep into my core, gathering the light born from every precious moment we had shared, every laugh, every tear, every triumph against darkness that struggled to hold us captive. Then I unleashed it. Light exploded outward in a torrent that shattered the very essence of the shadows surrounding us. I could feel the connection ignite with power, expanding like a supernova as the dark howled, rudimentary forms disintegrating under the sheer force of sheer will and relentless love. "Together we rise," we shouted as one, hands stretching out through the shadows, pulling each other into the heart of the light, the bonds between us stronger than any cord of darkness. And as we surged against the remnants of despair, clinging so desperately to our souls, I felt an unyielding truth. We were never alone. In that heartbeat, everything shattered. In that heartbeat, everything shattered. The darkness exploded in a furious burst, tendrils flailing and screaming. The air thick with an overwhelming cacophony of agony. Sounds of twisted wails echoed around me, shrieks that twisted my insides, making my heart pound like a war drum. Shadows recoiled, their forms tearing apart, dissolving like smoke in the wind, leaving behind an unsettling aura of defeat. But even as the shadows began to disintegrate, I felt something deeper, more sinister pulse beneath the surface. Fear wrapped around me tightly. I realized that the darkness wasn't just fading, it was regrouping. A distant, low rumble lurked at the edges of my consciousness, whispering vile promises of despair, a liminal space that beckoned with temptation. I turned to Marcy, her face twisted with determination and fear, as if she could sense the impending dread. "Tommy," she gasped, clutching my arm like a lifeline. Her grip was tighter than ever, but I could see the glint of uncertainty creeping into her eyes, the shadows still wavering at the edges of her form. "It's not over yet. We have to." Before she could finish, the ground trembled beneath us. An echoing crack split through the air, and the landscape around us buckled, like the earth was convulsing under the weight of unseen horrors. Torrents of black mist exploded from fissures opening up all around, swirling and churning, more alive than before. This was a new kind of darkness, deeper, as if it had been waiting, biding its time for a moment of weakness to strike. "Look out!" I shouted just as a massive shadow surged from the ground, skeletal hands clawing upward, reaching for us with ravenous intent. They moved with an unnatural speed, their fingers sharp like daggers with a life of their own. I tightened my grip on Marcy, our bond becoming our only weapon against the creeping dread. The air swirled with the scent of decay and smoke, filling my lungs with a suffocating heaviness, almost paralyzing me with fear. The shadows seemed to giggle, an unsettling chorus rising up from the abyss. "Join us," they sang in harmony, their voices smooth, echoing from every corner of the darkening world. "Join the eternal night. It's where you belong." "No!" I yelled, forcing myself to move even as the shadows beckoned with promises of peace and forgetfulness. "We won't succumb." I could feel the heat of the orb dissipating in my palm, the brightness dimming in the face of this new terror. The shadows surged closer, wrapping around us, black tendrils encircling our legs, pulling us downward as if wanting to bury us deep in the earth's embrace. I could hear the whispers, gnawing at my mind, unveiling my fears, the failures I had buried deep and the relentless guilt that crept into my dreams. "Tommy, hold on." Marcy's voice sliced through the growing darkness, her eyes fierce. I could see the light of rebellion burning within her, even as the shadows tried to extinguish it. With a sudden rush, I fell to my knees, digging my fingers into the earth, feeling the vibrations from the chaos below. I closed my eyes, conjuring every fragment of light I could grasp, each memory radiant and alive. With Marcy beside me, we pulled from the deepest wells of our minds. The laughter, the joy, the love that had defined us, those moments when we defied the encroaching darkness in our lives. The shadows roared with indignation, thrashing violently, as if sensing our determination rising. Their faces were grotesque, a jigsaw puzzle of horrors, shifting and glitching as they pressed closer, hungry for our light, yearning to absorb our defiance. I felt their cold breath, slick against my skin, and it sent shivers coursing down my spine. "Tommy," Marcy whispered, her voice trembling now. "It's getting stronger. I can feel it pulling at me." Her face twisted in fear as tendrils snaked up her arms, encircling her like a serpent preparing to strike. "No!" I shouted, forcing every ounce of energy into a desperate push for the light. "Together, Marcy, we have to show them that we won't be broken." I gritted my teeth and began to make a melodic chant, urging the brightness to rise. The orb flared in response, a flicker igniting against the darkness, illuminating the space around us with an ethereal glow. The shadows recoiled, hissing and snarling as if they were caught in the rays of an unrelenting sun. But still, I could see them gathering, reforming, feeding on our fear and doubt. Realizing their cunning, I focused, envisioning the warmth pressing back against the smothering cold. I felt Marcy pull closer, her fear blending with my light, creating a powerful coalition. "We can't let them win!" I cried again, the strength of our bond pushing back against the suffocating tendrils encircling us. Suddenly, an icy grip clamped around my throat, tightening until I could barely breathe. The shadows laughed, a low, guttural sound that sent chills racing down my spine. "You cannot escape your true selves," they taunted, rising ever closer. "You think this light can save you? You're nothing but broken vessels of despair." But their venomous words only spurred me on. The orb now buzzed with energy, a radiant cylinder of hope, and I could feel it shaking in my grasp like a live wire. "Not today," I shouted, pushing it forward with reckless abandon. The light exploded outward, creating a blinding wave that pushed the shadows back, freeing my throat from their vice grip. I could see the panic flare across the faded faces of the dark, the shadows twisting and writhing beneath the glow. "Get back," I ordered, intensity surging through me. "You have no power here." Yet, just when it seemed we had the upper hand, a new wave of shadows pushed through, dark as a stormy night, a ferocious surge descending from above like an avalanche. They rained down, wrapping around us, pulling tighter with an unmistakable ferocity. I gasped, feeling that coldness engulf me. Dulling the light I fought so hard to maintain. "You're alone," they whispered, their voices wrapping around my heart, each syllable dripping with poisonous intent. "You will be lost. You don't belong in the light. Embrace the dark." Panic clawed at me, but I fought back, calling upon the memories of Marcy's laughter, communal warmth igniting sparks of courage within me. "We are not lost," I shouted. With one determined push, I hurled the orb higher into the air. My heart raced, anticipation electrifying the air around us, illuminating even the deepest corners of the abyss. But the shadows weren't finished. They surged back, coming at us harder than ever before. The air thickened, vibrating with a dread that sunk deep into my bones. I could see skeletal fingers reaching out, grasping for the orb. For me, for everything we had fought to hold on to. "You will fail," they screeched, and the darkness twisted into terrible shapes, mocking our resolve. I felt Marcy's energy falter just for a moment, and I could see her reflection in the shadows, distorted and grotesque, mirroring the fears that tried to encapsulate everything we were. "Don't give in," I yelled, my voice rising above the gale of despair, each word a command to push through the fear wrapping around us. Together, we shouted in unison, despite the evil thrumming around us. Even as shadows pressed in from all sides, a thick, suffocating fog consuming every inch of our will to fight. It felt like an eternity, suspended in that dark embrace. But in that moment of shared strength, I felt the orb pulse anew, brighter than before, almost alive with defiance. We stood poised against the tide of darkness, light flickering like an uncontrollable flame, determined to overcome the encroaching void that sought to reclaim us both. Then, as if sensing our rallying spirit, the shadows shrieked and began to tremble. A visceral fear coursed through them, a flurry of hatred and desperation, swirling wildly, breaking apart like shattering glass. And just when I thought we might be free, a low growl turned my blood cold, a heavy, slithering sound lingering in the air, so deep I could feel it in my chest. Something stirred in the center of the darkness, rising slowly like a malevolent tide. A massive form emerged, monstrous and unyielding, rising from the depths of despair, its eyes burning bright, red smoldering embers in a sea of darkness. "You think you can escape me?" it growled, its voice nightmarishly deep, echoing with a resonance that rattled my bones. Panic washed over me as I saw the creature loom, towering and shrouded, its shape a night. Mare made real, claws glistening with the promise of violence, each slow movement deliberate and predatory. "You cannot defy your creator," it hissed, shadows bending to its will, snaking further and further around us. The chill seeped into my bones, the light we conjured feeling so fragile, so small against the monstrous entity. The laughter echoed deeper now, filling my mind, wrapping around my heart, squeezing away the warmth I fought so hard to hold on to. "Join me," it whispered, seductive and chilling, the embodiment of despair that promised release from pain. "You can be free." Marcy's grip tightened on my arm again, her breath shallow, but her spirit unwavering. "We won't surrender to you," she declared, her resolve illuminating the dark. But the entity only laughed, taunting us as if the very essence of our fear fortified its strength. As the shadows coiled tighter, I could feel my own will wavering, the emotion threatening to bleed into despair. Visions of doubt danced through my mind, glimpses of moments where I had failed, lost friendships, dashed hopes. It gripped me like a vice, threatening to tear apart everything we stood for. "Fight it, Tommy!" Marcy's voice cut through the haze like a beacon, pulling me back from the brink. "You have to believe." Her words ignited a spark of hope within me, and I summoned every ounce of will I had left. Together, we shouted as one, each note reverberating through the darkness, shaking its very foundation. As we filled the air with our unified cry, the orb glowed anew, a solid beam cutting through the night, a promise of resilience against overwhelming odds. With that surge of confidence, I thrust the light forward again, channeling every piece of our bond, every glint of hope into one concentrated blast. The shadows shrieked, the force of our defiance collapsing into chaos, the air rippling as light poured forth, illuminating even the darkest corners of our despair. "Not today," I bellowed, feeling a rush of adrenaline intertwining with Marcy's unyielding spirit. The tendrils recoiled, thrashing in frustration as the radiant fire surged onward, illuminating the beast towering before us, the shadows recoiling in horror, disintegrating into wisps of vapor. But as we pushed forward, battling against the looming figure of dread, I felt a horrifying sense of realization settling deep within me. This fight was far from finished. There was more lurking, something darker, something hidden beneath the chaos we had yet to face. There was more lurking, something darker, something hidden beneath the chaos we had yet to face. The shadows stirred restlessly, swirling ominously as the air thickened with a stench of rot and despair. Murmurs echoed from unseen mouths, twisted whispers weaving through the darkness, speaking in riddles that wrapped around my mind like vines squeezing the light from my soul. I could feel it then, a pressure building at the edges of our perception, heavier than anything we had encountered so far. "Tommy, what is that?" Marcy's voice trembled, barely breaking through the cacophony of whispers that had risen to a crescendo. Her eyes darted around, searching the twisting void for the source of the terror we now faced. The ground beneath us convulsed, jagged fissures opening like maws, eager to consume whatever remained of our courage. "I don't know," I admitted, dread pooling in my stomach. I felt compelled to shield her from the grotesque sight that loomed ahead. The light we summoned flickered, wavering under the shadow's immense focus. Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, giving way to a figure that brought the air to a standstill. Emerging from the mist, a creature unlike any I had ever seen slithered into view. Its skin shimmered with a sickly illumination, rippling like oil on water, shimmering greens and purples morphing into shapes that seemed to reach out like claws toward us. Dozens of eyes blinked open in the sludgy mass, each gaze penetrating, studying the depths of my fear, stripping me bare before it. "What do you desire?" the creature hissed, its voice a chilling harmony that resonated within the core of my being. Each syllable echoed with unearthly power, wrapping around our minds and hearts. Freedom from pain? Release from your burdens? I swallowed hard, trying to find strength to respond, but the cacophony of doubts in my mind surged louder. No, we won't fall for your lies. My voice broke off, trembling as I met the soft glow of its grotesque eyes staring directly into my soul, and I felt a magnetic pull, both enticing and terrifying. Then fight, it replied, a twisted smile curling along its slimy lips. How long can you resist when despair claws at your heart like a starving beast? You cannot escape your nature. You will join me in this eternal abyss, willingly or not. The shadows twisted, reforming into ghastly shapes, faces contorted in agony and rage as they hovered just beyond the edges of my vision. They seemed to taunt me, filling the air with the chilling sound of breathless laughter, grating against my already frayed nerves. Breathing hard, I forced myself to focus on Marcy, her fierce determination a flicker of light in this swirling tempest of despair. "What do we do?" she whispered urgently, glancing from the creature to the shadows morphing behind it. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath, my heart pounding to the rhythm of fear and hope intertwined. "We have to fight back," I said fiercely, the words spilling out as I embraced our bond, letting it illuminate the dark recesses of my mind. "We have each other." As if on cue, the creature lunged, its body writhing and shifting in a grotesque display of speed, closing the distance with a hunger that sent chills racing down my spine. I could feel the air thickening, a tangible weight hanging like a noose around my neck. But Marcy beside me was a reminder of purpose. "Now!" I shouted, raising the orb high above our heads, focusing every ounce of energy into a single point of blinding light. In that moment, the darkness hissed, recoiling as if burned, and I felt its rage lash at me, a cacophonous wave that threatened to overwhelm. "Together," echoed Marcy's voice, resonating in harmony with my own. Light burst forth, flooding the space, shining with a brilliant radiance that tore through the veils of shadows, illuminating their twisted forms. But the creature was relentless. It slashed through the light, forcing its way forward, screeching with ravenous anger. "You think you can save yourselves? You are nothing, nothing but shadows in my world." It lunged again, and a wave of darkness surged toward us, plunging like a tidal wave ready to drown our light. With panic rising, I felt the orb vibrating in my hand, trembling with potential energy, the bond between us strengthened by every collective memory we had forged in this battle. "Do not falter," I shouted, and we launched our light forward, pushing it against the encroaching dark in a desperate attempt to hold our ground. The intensity of the explosion tore through the air, gouging a fissure in the darkness as the light flared brilliantly, radiating outward. The shadows writhed and shrieked, twisting as the radiance burned against their forms, melting away the malevolence that had persisted like an unyielding fog. Yet just when it seemed we gained ground, the shadows convulsed, churning malevolently as if caught in a storm. From the depths below, a new sound echoed, a low rumble that resonated through the ground, making the walls of reality shudder. The light combined with darkness created a resonance that vibrated through us, twisting my body with a painful intensity. "Can you feel it?" The monstrous creature coiled back, its countless eyes now bulging, radiating pure ire and fear. "You cannot hide from what is beneath. You call forth the abyss in your defiance." Suddenly, from the depths of the swirling mass, tendrils lurched forward, snapping through the air like whips. I could see them now, fleshy and pulsating, slick with a dark haze that clung to my skin. They loomed, wrapping around my legs, pulling me toward an unseen void that promised eternal suffering. I struggled, pulling against the bindings, but the grip was fierce and unyielding. "Tommy!" I heard Marcy shriek, her grip slipping as shadows surged between us, swallowing her cries, leaving nothing but a hollow silence. My heart thundered in my chest, tearing at the edges of sanity as despair clawed at my mind. Marcy! I howled into the void, desperation eating at my resolve. Stay with me? But her light flickered, reflecting the dark onslaught that surrounded us, and I felt the equilibrium of our power shifting in the face of such overwhelming dread. The creature unleashed a derisive roar, the sound slashing through the air like knives, causing the darkness to ripple and convulse around us. You're mistaken if you think you can escape. Those pulsating tendrils surged closer, ready to plunge into my flesh, ready to drag me down into the remnants of my own fears. In that moment, something shifted within me, a light flickering in the deepest shadows of my heart. I grasped the light desperately, summoning every fragment of hope and courage forged within our bond. I concentrated, hearing the echoes of my thoughts, the laughter we shared, those moments of joy that had sparked life within us. "No!" I cried. "We are not yours." With that, I released the orb, sending it careening forward. The light pulsed with renewed vigor as the shadows flared beneath its brilliance. But even as the brilliance surged, the shadows retaliated, crashing against it with a fury that churned the very air. It was a brutal clash, light fighting to push back the consuming darkness while the void sought to extinguish it entirely. Suddenly, I was pulled back into a vision of Marcy, alone, her laughter turning to echoes of muffled cries. I saw her struggling in the darkness as tendrils wrapped around her, craving the very essence of her spirit, transforming her light into nothingness. "No!" I screamed, the agony igniting a fierce flame within my chest. The shadows recoiled, faltering momentarily in the force of my anguish. "I won't let this happen." And then I launched forward, my entire being igniting with a fierce intensity one did not know I possessed. The orb swirled, a vortex of light that expanded and illuminated the darkened depths, reshaping the space around us. I felt the pulse of hope echo in time with my heart, a steady beat that resonated through the chaotic void. Together, I roared, knowing we could not bear the weight of despair individually. In unison, I sent forth the orb again, the surge of collective energy racing toward the heart of darkness that had risen, meeting it with our combined will. The collision was cataclysmic. Light erupted outward in a brilliant explosion, shattering the tethered void that sought to drown us. Shadows recoiled with a deafening screech, unraveling in a whirlwind of confusion and fury, faces peeling away like paper in a storm. I could feel the darkness rippling in panic, twisting and morphing into shapes of terror I couldn't comprehend. But my heart surged, steadied by the connection with Marcy even in the chaos. "We can do this!" I screamed, determination fueling my actions. As the shadows writhed, shifting wildly, something else emerged, breaking through the tangle, merging into the luminous pulse. Shapes surged beneath the surface, ghastly figures clawing through, eyes hollow and sunken. Their mouths opened in sharp screams, puling and shrieking as they fought against the tide of brilliant light. Each face reminded me of lost souls caught in despair, torment reaching through time, each one a reminder of the weight we carried in our hearts, of those who had succumbed to the darkness. "No!" I yelled, refusing to give in. "Not in my heart, not today." The orb surged again, glowing with newfound energy, claiming the void swirling around as it expanded, swallowing the nightmares whole. Faces twisted in agony merged with the radiant light, their cries blending into a unison of anguish and defiant struggle. The very space around us shimmered, the boundaries of reality warping with our shared defiance. The creature screamed now, its voice filled with rage and fear. "You're fools to think you can resist forever," it bellowed, panic rising in its tone as the shadows began to implode in on themselves, dissolving into wisps of smoke. "I am the darkness, the void. I am eternal." Yet within that chaos, a fear grew, a primal realization that even here, amid the frantic battle, shadows were still coiling at the edges of my mind. The creature's form twisted in grotesque shapes, a mass of terrifying tentacles and glowing eyes. I could feel it shrinking, collapsing under the brilliance of our bond. A desperate fight to cling to its fading dominion. But as it struggled, I felt a chill descend, an inevitable shadow lurking just beyond the limits of my perception. It whispered through the cracks of my determination, filling my mind with haunting images, a past of failures, an inevitable decay clawing for space. "Tommy," Marcy cried, the desperation clear in her voice as I felt the orb's glow weakening. "Don't let it in. Hold on." But the shadows writhed dangerously close, flitting through my peripheral vision, seeking to taint the light we had fought to uphold. I fought to shake off the thoughts creeping into my consciousness, but they melded into the very fabric of my being, reminding me of every time I'd given up, of every mistake I had made. "No, I won't let you," I roared, tears brimming as I fought against the pull of despair, forcing the golden energy to rise again, pushing the creeping shadows back with every ounce of will I could muster. "Together," I cried out, channeling every memory of love, every shred of gratitude we had shared as we fought against the encroaching dark. "Together we are stronger." The light surged forward again, brighter and more powerful than before, illuminating the once malevolent creature's form. Shadow and light collided, roaring in a symphony of competing wills as I swept the orb in a wide arc, blasting the darkness with unrelenting force. And just as the tendrils began to retract, a chilling realization struck me. This darkness had been feeding on despair, and I could feel the tendrils grasping for my vulnerability, each whisper carving away at the strength I fought to maintain. "Tommy, it's too strong," Marcy yelled, her voice strained as the creature's form began to reconstitute itself, clawing back from the brink of oblivion. But I wouldn't relent. I couldn't let the shadows encase us again. "We're not alone," I screamed, pouring everything into the orb, 1,000 memories racing like fire through my veins. "Not now, not ever." The orb ignited one last time, the brilliance cascading over the shadows, the darkness howling in fury as they shattered, breaking apart in a violent explosion of ethereal light. In the wake of that cataclysm, something unexpected emerged, a final surge of shadow that coalesced at the edges, a thrum of dark power, shrieking with both fury and despair. A flicker of hope ignited darkness within. The void, the hidden remnants of fears getting bolder, reaching closer. "Finish this," Marcy shouted, her voice cutting through the mounting chaos that threatened to swallow us. With that plea echoing in my mind, I felt my resolve sharpen. The shadows writhed, a tangling mass of darkness preparing to strike again, boiling with an insatiable hunger, clawing toward us with a life of their own. Tendrils lashed out, whispering promises born from fear, seeking to seize me in their cold embrace. My heart pounded wildly. I could feel the skin on my arms prickle like icy needles as they approached, the air crackling with electric terror. But I wouldn't allow them to touch me. I swiped the orb through the air, feeling its energy pulsate, vibrant and alive. "You are nothing," I bellowed, forcing every ounce of strength into the light that radiated from it. The shadows shrieked in anger, the sound slicing through the chilling atmosphere like glass shattering. Their mournful cries echoed in the dark, mocking me, taunting the very essence of my fear. As I pressed forward, the ground shuddered beneath my feet, every tremor a reminder of the chaos threatening to engulf us. Murky forms began to peel away from the dark, faces contorted in agony emerging from the swirling void. They gazed at me with hollow eyes, mouths stretched into eerie, silent screams, their souls trapped in endless torment. "What are you?" I gasped, terror knotting in my chest as the realization settled. A manifestation of every dark thought and nightmare I had ever experienced. It was as if all the moments of self-doubt materialized in those wretched visages, dragging me toward despair. I could feel the sickening weight of their anguish wanting to spill over into my own darkness. "Join us," they whispered in unison, their voices layering into a haunting lullaby that slithered into my ears, wrapping around my mind. You cannot escape this fate. Embrace your fears. The bitterness in their tones seeped into my very being, tempting me to give in, to let the shadows wash over and engulf me whole. No, I won't be like you, I shouted defiantly, clutching the orb with a vice grip as if it could anchor me against the tide of despair. The glow flickered, fighting against the onslaught, illuminating the faces of the damned, but their whispers grew louder, mingling with echoes of my own insecurities and failures. Remember the times you were alone? The moments you felt unloved? They hissed, voices like slithering serpents. Let go. The burden is too great. Suddenly, the tendrils reached closer, grazing my arms like icy fingers. I could feel the chill invade my spirit. A creeping sense of hopelessness threatened to pull me under. Memories clawed at the edges of my mind, each one more haunting than the last. A series of regrets saying that I was never enough. Tommy, focus. Marcy screamed, desperation flavoring her tone. I turned to her, finding her gaze a flicker of defiance amid the chaos. Her light shone fiercely, battling against the shadows, trying to breach our bond. Together, I shouted, finding strength in her presence, but the darkness revolted in a frenzy. Suddenly, it swelled, obscuring Marcy's light, rushing toward me like an avalanche of shadows. The tendrils writhed with maddened glee, surging forward in a violent tide, and for a moment, all I could see was black, an endless void ready to consume our hope. No! I roared, forcing myself to stand my ground. I summoned memories of joy, of laughter, clinging to the warmth that remained despite the darkness. I thought of Marcy's unwavering spirit, the way she stood beside me against impossible odds, and in that moment, I felt our connection ignite with renewed vigor. The orb surged back to life, radiating warmth and brightness. I thrust it forward, aiming for the epicenter of darkness. The shadows recoiled, thrashing violently as the light breached the veil. You think you could drown me? I bellowed with renewed conviction. I choose to fight. In one blinding moment, the light erupted, spreading like wildfire through the encroaching void. The darkness shrieked, the twisted forms retreating in horror, faces shifting back into the shadows, crumbling at the edges like ash in the wind. Yet as I pushed back against the tide, I noticed it. The shadow at the center, the creature's remaining core, pulsing with a deep, sinister glow. It expanded and contracted, feeding off the darkness around it, reclaiming the energy lost in the battle. This was the heart of the shadows, an entity that existed solely to thrive in fear and despair. You cannot defeat me, it spat, its voice reverberating like rolling thunder in my mind. Your light is but a flicker in the abyss. But in that moment of terror, I felt another wave of warmth rise within me, a sense of purpose sweeping through like a tide. I can't do this alone. I remembered Marcy, felt her presence anchoring me even in the void. But together, we can defeat you. I turned, signaling to her, hoping to share that spark of light. Then suddenly I felt the ground beneath me shift again. A deep rumble shook the very fabric of our reality, a churning depth of darkness threatening to envelop everything. The air crackled with energy, ripples of shadow stretching out as if the very earth was crying out in pain. And then, the shadowy tendrils reformed, streaming toward the orb, sinuous and serpentine, alive with a malevolence I had not faced before. The specter that had haunted my dreams formed again, its shadowy presence towering above, a grotesque parody of humanity, bathed in darkness with limbs flailing, split into several forms, each one seducing me with promises of power and comfort. Don't let it get to you, Marcy's voice echoed, urging me to remember our purpose, our mission to push back against the dark, but fear surged within, a primal instinct telling me to flee. As the tendrils slithered closer, I pushed against the horror, my body trembling, teetering on the edge of despair. Dread clawed at my throat. The very essence of what I feared most was manifesting before me, luring me into the depths. "You don't want to be here," the creature whispered knowingly, its voice draping over me like a cocoon, enveloping my heart in dread. The words twisted in my mind, and I fought back, screaming, as I reached inside for courage, for that spark of hope that had gotten me this far. With every ounce of resolve left in my spirit, I thrust out the orb once more, harnessing every memory, every experience that had shaped me, melding our light into an unbreakable bond, a force as fierce as the shadows that sought to reclaim me. Instantly, the air shifted, radiant beams erupting from the orb, illuminating the grotesque tendrils and shadowy forms as they shrieked and writhed in agony. "This is your end," I declared, the light burning brightly, scorching through the shadows like fire through paper. The air hung thick with a smoky dread. But even as the brilliance gained ground, the creature launched one final assault, tendrils thickening and fusing back into the heart of darkness, its ghastly form rallying against the oncoming tide. An anguished roar resonated through the void, reverberating deep within my bones, each sound resonating with the echoes of grief and anguish. "Fight it!" Marcy cried, and I could sense her spirit standing firm against the tide of despair. "Remember why we came here." I surged forward, pushing past the remnants of dark memories, refusing to succumb. Every flicker of light went dim in comparison to the shadows that surrounded us. Yet I felt our connection, pulse stronger with each heartbeat, pushing away the remnants of every haunting doubt. In one decisive move, I hurled the orb toward the central mass, energy bursting forth with a brilliance that drowned out the darkness. I was met with an explosion of light, shattering, blinding, and marvelous. The void shrieked in abject terror, shadows imploding under the radiant force. But as I fought against this raw despair, I felt the pulse of darkness lurk deep within, the cold truth rising in the pit of my stomach. "There's more!" I yelled, panic rising as the swirling mist began to heal around the edges, coiling back toward the wounded heart of the darkness, ready to reclaim its domain in a terrifying dance. It was a battle between hope and despair, light and shadows, a swirling mass of turmoil, and I could feel the balance tipping precariously. My breath caught, trapped in a world teetering on the edge of a precipice, and I screamed through grit teeth, "We will not yield. You will not win." The shadows recoiled as my words somehow carried a weight of their own, burdening the darkness that engulfed us. For just a breath, the light flickered as if realizing its own strength, intertwining into our will, ascending with fierce determination. "I see you," I breathed, meeting the soulless eyes of the abyss. "For what you truly are, a coward hiding in the fear of others." And with that realization, the orb pulsed wildly, an explosion of radiance that resonated within the heart of the void. The scream that followed was one of anguished fury, a thunderous crescendo that reverberated through every part of the swirling chaos, countering and entwining with the pervasive darkness. I felt something shift, the balance turning in our favor as shadows began to recoil, dissolving into wisps of night. I fought to hold on. I pushed forth, determined to break the final chains that bound us to despair. Yet the creature surged forward once more, fiercely undeterred, its presence a flood of darkness that sought to encapsulate us. As it retaliated, tendrils lashed out with terrifying speed, slicing through the light, and I found myself engulfed, staring into the abyss with wide eyes, breathless and terrified, feeling the very essence of hopelessness wrap around my heart. "It's feeding on your doubt." Marcy's shout broke through the chaos again, but the shadows danced maliciously, fangs bared, quickly encircling us. I fought back tears as creeping dread settled deep beneath my skin, whispering that we were too small, too fragile against the might of the darkness. But as the void began to swirl tighter, I felt the hot flame of hope flicker, a desperate pulse within me. I realized, if I was to win this battle, I had to conquer the darkness within, the doubts that lingered in the corners of my mind. And so, I recalled the memories of strength and joy. Every moment with Marcy where light was birthed from shadows. Every laugh shared. Every adventure that defied the dark. I focused on her light, alive and vibrant, because with it, I would not crumble. Together, come on, Marcy, I yelled, pushing the orb toward her. Our hands meeting where the shadows threatened to devour us whole. With one final surge, we thrust the glowing orb toward the creature, our hearts merging into a single purpose, a raw, blinding, incandescent light bursting forth with such fury that even the darkness recoiled, shrieking like a banshee as it fought against the inevitable. But the shadows could not withstand the radiance that surged in unity, and as the light ripped through the darkness, illuminating the nightmarish forms, I felt the heart of despair shatter. The tendrils unraveled like mist in a storm, caught in the tempest of brilliant energy, shrieking in horror as they melted into wisps of swirling smoke. The void shuddered, collapsing upon itself in chaotic turbulence, once pristine darkness fracturing into millions of shards, swarming and circling before being consumed by the radiant light, vanishing into nothingness. Yet in the wreckage left behind, a new form emerged, a final shadowy specter rising from the depths, embodying all the darkness it had sheltered before. Its eyes glinted, a deep, murky reflection of every fear I held within. This was the core of the darkness I had fought so hard against, and it cast a malicious grin, as if recognizing every creeping doubt and despair that had haunted me through the years. "Did you think you could extinguish me?" It taunted, voice dripping with malice, echoing in my mind like a haunting lullaby, shuddering through my very bones. "I am carved from every pain, every tear you've shed in the night. You can never be free." I staggered under the weight of its words, shaken to my core as the air grew heavy with decay, shadows pooling at its feet like a shroud. But amid the crushing despair, I felt Marcy's unwavering spirit beside me, a reminder that I was not alone, that together, we could forge through the depths of the darkest night. "Tommy, we are stronger than our fears." Her voice surged within me, a light illuminating the darkness. "We choose our destiny. Fight this unrelenting despair." Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself, staring into the abyss, allowing the warmth of her support to burn. The darkness around us pulsed like a living thing, breathing, thrumming with a grotesque rhythm that matched the terror in my heart. Each beat echoed the taunts of the shadow creature, swelling with potent malevolence, a malicious joy dancing in its eyes as it fed off my doubts. "Look at you," it sneered, the voice slithering along the edges of my mind, carving into my resolve. A flicker in the vastness of night, desperately clinging to the light. "You've always been afraid. Look around you. The shadows have never left you." As it spoke, chilling visions rushed back. Lost nights spent shivering alone, the weight of silence pressing down, engulfing me until I was suffocated. I saw faces, lost and twisted, melding into the shadows, barely recognizable as once familiar figures engulfed by dark tendrils, reaching for me with mournful longing. They were all there, the moments I tried to forget, rising from the depths of my despair. Friends who had drifted away, laughter that had turned to dust, affection replaced with an icy void. It was as if the creature wove them into a tapestry of my deepest regrets, showcasing every failure like trophies commemorating the darkness I could never escape. "You think you can defeat me with memories?" It roared, the low growl reverberating through the air like thunder, vibrating against my chest. "Those shackles will only bind you closer to the doom you seek to escape. You belong with me." "No!" I yelled, gritting my teeth. I could feel the ground tremble beneath my feet, as if reality itself was sensing the struggle of our souls. Lightning flickered ominously in the distance, illuminating the void in fleeting moments, casting grotesque shadows across the remnants of what I thought was a united front. The orb vibrated in my hands, a pulse of warmth amidst the growing coldness. It pulsed like a living heartbeat, forcing me to remember who I was and the connection I shared with Marcy. She stood beside me, her presence a hesitant glow against the dark tide, threatening to drown us both. "Tommy, remember what we fought for," she shouted, her voice breaking through the suffocating darkness, urging me forward. "We need to channel everything. The hope we've built, the love we've shared. Focus on that." And just like that, I grasped onto her words, feeling the tension of despair start to unravel in my heart like thread from a frayed garment. I closed my eyes for a moment, envisioning our laughter beneath the stars, the warmth of her hand in mine as we faced our fears together. The memory felt like a viscerally warm embrace, igniting my spirit with courage. I thrust my hands forward, the orb now a blazing beacon of our collective will. "You will not win," I shouted, channeling every ounce of defiance that had been building inside me. Every moment of joy sparked within our shared journey. The light exploded from the orb, blasting outwards, fiercely illuminating the twisted form of the creature. The creature recoiled, its form fluttering like a dark flame, eyes blazing with rage. "You think your light can banish me? I am born from the shadows of your mind. I am the whispers of every doubt and fear you've ever nurtured." The air crackled with electric tension as the darkness coiled like serpents around me, each tendril reaching inwards, seeking to ensnare my spirit. They curled around my ankles, dragging in my essence, speaking in low, hypnotic tones, trying to draw me back to where I had once been. "We can live in harmony, though," they crooned softly, voices dripping with sweetness. "Leave the light behind. Embrace the power of what I can offer. I can grant you everything you've ever desired." Creeping terror burrowed into my mind, all those forgotten dreams teasing the edges of my consciousness. A sinister chill swept through me, making my skin crawl. What if there was truth in those whispers? I could be strong, invulnerable, no longer feeling the pain of isolation and loss. Torn between the possibility of power and the bond one shared with Marcy, I hesitated, but only for a second. "I won't fall for your lies," I shouted defiantly, shaking my head to cast off the shadows that lingered. "You're nothing but a trickster feeding off pain. You will not claim my heart." And with that, I released the orb with a desperate force, sending bright tendrils of warm light spiraling into the darkness all around. The shadows hissed as they retreated, forming walls around the creature. It screamed, the sound like shards of glass being shattered, fury emanating from its twisted form. "Fool!" it howled, voice laced with fury. "You think you can escape?" A wave of darkness surged toward me, thicker than before, melding with the screams of the trapped souls. They reached for me, the expressions on their twisted faces wretched and pleading, mouths opening to deliver what sounded like my name. Each scream an echo of memories best left behind. "Tommy, they can't reach you," Marcy screamed, her voice a lifeline amidst the rising tide of despair. I could see her fighting back, a vivid light illuminating her figure as shadows lashed against her, desperate to consume her spirit as well. The very air became taut with the suffocating weight of anguish as I felt the darkness closing in, silken whispers hissing promises. Kinships formed from sorrow and despair. I could feel the cold gnawing at my resolve. It sought to pry open the door of my deepest fears, tugging at the edges of sanity, trying to drag me into the abyss. But I wouldn't let it win, steeling myself. I reached deep within the cavity of my heart, grasping on every glimmer of hope, every flicker of joy big enough to push back against the tide. "Together," I shouted, my voice rising above the growing cacophony surrounding us. "Together, we can fight this." With every ounce of strength, I joined my energy with her, feeling the brilliance and colors combining, an explosion of incandescent hues igniting the chilling dark. The orb flared, turning into a blinding sun that forced the shadows to peel back, screaming as the light consumed them, setting them ablaze. But even then, a lingering defiance formed above me, a shadow coalescing into the dreadful heart of the darkness. From that core, a more grotesque form twisted into being, a monstrous entity of pure dread, oozing menace, eyes blinking into existence, vile and alive with malicious intent. "Don't think your light can cleanse me," it crooned, its voice saturated with venom. "It only fuels my power. I am the harbinger of your despair, the manifestation of all that you fear. You cannot escape." Darkness surged with blinding speed, slashing through the air to strike at the very essence of what we had created, a darkness that split the light, clawing its way toward my heart. I felt the terror clawing up my throat, struggling against the weight of the creature's presence. But this time, I gripped Marcy's hand tighter. "I'm here," she reminded me, a fierce spark of defiance igniting her features. "We face this together. Remember, they feed on our fear." With an understanding set in my heart, I seized the orb as it pulsed with renewed vigor, pushing against all that the creature represented. "We will not yield," I shouted, channeling every ounce of my will into our bright bond, the light growing more intense as shadow clawed at the edges. The orb radiated warmth, illuminating the encroaching darkness as it surged forth. In that one moment, I felt something shift, a power rising from deep within the cavernous pit of despair I had been trapped in. I summoned up every act of love, every thread of connection buried deep in my soul, every burst of laughter and warmth that we had shared. As the shadow loomed closer, I roared in defiance. "We are the light of every moment we've held. You have no power here." The air blazed with energy, and the orb erupted again, releasing luminescent waves that pushed against the very fabric of the creature. It shrieked in horror, its spindly fingers recoiling and shattering as light cascaded through the darkness, tearing apart the vicious tapestry of despair it had woven. As the light expanded, it revealed a hidden landscape obscured by shadows. The ground beneath our feet transformed, lush green grass breaking through the weighty pallor of despair, reclaiming the space once draped in darkness. The shadows writhed, desperately seeking to reclaim their territory, but the light pierced through their anxious grasp, scattering them into nothingness. But amidst the brilliance, the core of darkness lingered, clawing at the edges of my mind like smoke refusing to dissipate. A single eye, dark and hollow, loomed larger than anything before, reflecting every shadow of my doubt as it fixed upon me. "You can fight, but you cannot win," it whispered, a chilling caress that predicated my thoughts with icy fingers. "I am every fear you've ever harbored and every regret that has whispered your name. You are weak, and you will fall into darkness once more." As those words hung thick in the air, I felt a coldness seize my heart. A familiar sensation slithered up my spine, the icy terror of vulnerability creeping ever closer. The silence in my mind shattered beneath the weight of its whispers. But even as the shadows clawed desperately at my resolve, I remembered Marcy standing firm beside me, her unwavering light pushing against the creeping dread. "No, we choose our own path," I shouted, forcing the fear down, feeling the warmth of the orb pulse with undeniable strength. Together, we surged forward, light exploding from the orb like a supernova, fracturing the very fabric of the darkness before us. In that moment, with clarity surging through every part of me, I realized the truth. We weren't just fighting against the darkness. We were fighting for the legacy of every flicker of hope, every beautiful memory we had constructed together. And when I held on to that truth, the shadows began to fade, screaming against the light that threatened to consume them entirely. But the hollow eye flickered, a last desperate grasp at our vanishing hopes. "You cannot vanquish me," it howled, fury igniting its form into what appeared to be smoke and ash, twisting into an embodiment of everything that clung to uncertainty. And then, as if in a last attempt to reclaim what it had lost, the darkness surged violently, expanding with ferocious speed. It twisted, wrapping around me in a furious embrace, attempting to smother the light, but instead producing more light that pulsed and radiated intensely. "Fight!" Marcy screamed, her voice piercing through the cacophony of anguished howls around us. "Don't let it take you." In that profound moment, with shadows writhing at my feet, I pushed forward one last time, the orb ablaze with fury, steady in its brilliance against the chilling breath of despair. As wave after wave of light surged, it obliterated the icy shadows that closed in, illuminating every corner of our existence as the darkness dissipated like mist before dawn. But deep within me, I could still feel it gathering, the little flicker of uncertainty remaining. Shadows waiting just at the edge of consciousness, craving the moment I would dare to falter. And as the last remnants of the creature shattered into nothingness, I realized that the battle had not yet come to a conclusion. Not yet. The darkness had merely retreated, hiding in the recesses of my mind, waiting for the moment it could lash back when my guard was down. "Tommy," Marcy's voice was soft and grounding, pulling me back from the brink of despair. "We did it, but we can't let our guard down. We have to stay vigilant." We stood together, hearts racing, the landscape alive with the remnants of our struggle. But even now, as the sun broke through the ominous clouds above us, golden rays spilling onto the blossoming flowers, I felt a shift in the air, a rising tension, a creeping whisper in the wind like a long-forgotten nightmare clawing its way back to the surface. Suddenly, darkness rolled back over the hills, thick and suffocating, spreading like ink blotting out the very light we had fought for. I could taste the fear in the air, the scent of dread curling around, seeping into every crevice of my mind. Why is it coming back? I breathed, panic rising within me as shadows pooled around our feet, whispering promises of despair and worry, pouring forth from the earth like a tide. "We need to go," Marcy urged, glancing around frantically, plunging the atmosphere into heightened anxiety. "We have to find a way out of here before it closes in." But as we turned to flee, the ground trembled, rippling like liquid shadow, creating a gaping maw that opened before us, a cavernous mouth ready to consume us once more. The air grew thicker, the shadows coiling dangerously close, a palpable presence lurking in the corners of our vision, waiting for us. But as we turned to flee, the ground trembled, rippling like liquid shadow, creating a gaping maw that opened before us. The mouth expanded wider, jagged edges glinting like broken glass, hungry and dark, revealing an inky abyss that seemed to draw in all the light around it. The air grew thick and suffocating, almost electric, and I could hear a low, growling hum vibrating through the ground, a sickening echo that vibrated in my bones. Panic surged. "Marcy, we can't stay here," I shouted, adrenaline blasting through me with every desperate heartbeat. The shadows licked at my heels, each tendril and noose tightening around my thoughts, threatening to pull me into that ravenous void where only silence awaited. As we darted to the side, the opening of darkness quivered, as if alive, pushing forth a chilling wind that whispered my name in a chorus of haunting voices, soft and compelling. "Tommy, Tommy," they called, promises woven within their dissonant harmony. Each echo was a memory tainted with doubt, a fragment of every choice I regretted, weaving together to form a tapestry too enticing to resist. "Don't listen," Marcy yelled, pulling me back from the edge of that abyss. Her eyes were fierce, blazing with determination, a lighthouse cutting through the ensuing storm. "We go now." Her urgency jolted me into action again. The maw quaked as if frustrated by our resistance, tendrils of shadow swirling violently in response, sending chilling gusts that clawed at us, trying to hold us back. Hasty steps led us past twisted trees that loomed like skeletal fingers, their branches reaching out, grasping, begging for life. But the forest was alive with eerie sounds, whispers darting between the trees, low and sinister, wrapping around us like a suffocating fog. The sidewalk began to pulse beneath our feet, as if the earth itself was alive, shuddering with every heavy footfall. An unholy orchestra surged all around, creaking and groaning as the shadows danced and flickered in the gloom, twisting in grotesque formations. Keep moving, I urged, glancing back at the opening that threatened to swallow us whole. But even as we stepped away from the edge, the shadows grew thicker, pouring from the ground like dark oil, dismissing the light we had fought so hard to create. Suddenly, the tree bark cracked, splintering open like a mouth, revealing a hollow cavity that pulsed with a dim, ominous glow. Within it, dozens of hollow eyes blinked back, watching us with unsettling curiosity, children of the darkness waiting for a moment of weakness. The mouths began to whisper, each word mingling with the wind, creating a cacophony of fear that surged into my mind, urging me to turn back, to surrender. Tommy, focus. Marcy's voice cut through the clamor, sharp and demanding. Don't let them in. They're trying to break you. I could hear the tremor in her words, feel her determination like a force, but the weight of the shadows threatened to drag us under. We pressed on, plowing through the suffocating gloom that wrapped around us like a cloak. I turned my gaze onto the path ahead, forcing myself to look at the scattered remnants of light still fighting to cut through the encroaching dark. The flickering signposts we had seen before now began to warp, letters bending and twisting until they spelled out my deepest fears, thrumming there in the air, a mantra of despair. Turn back, it hissed. You will only find pain. You cannot escape your fate. No! I yelled back at the whispers, rallying my spirit against the haunting echo of doubt. We are stronger than this. Courage surged through me, dissipating the grip of terror, but the ground beneath us jolted again, sending shockwaves through the air. Roots from the trees around us twisted violently, burrowing into the soil like snakes, blocking our way, forming an intricate barrier designed to trap us within their snare. Marcy and I stumbled back, fear flaring at the uncertainty of the path ahead, the shadows now swirling around us like a tempest, dark and chaotic. And before we could think, a crashing wave of darkness burst from the trees, a monstrous figure, a creature drawn of every shadow that had ever haunted my soul. It towered over us, grotesquely elongated arms stretching toward the sky, fingers tapering into vicious claws that gleamed in the dim light. Its eyes glowed a shimmering red, and for every blink, I felt my heart race a little faster, like a moth drawn towards a flame. Why do you flee? It rumbled, each word rolling like thunder through the air. You are not meant for the light. You belong to darkness. The words struck like ice, slashing at my will. I staggered backward, wrestling with the destructive truth it thrust upon me, an unsettling reality peeking through the shadows. I could feel it reaching into the crevices of my fears, the deep-set insecurities whispering that perhaps, just perhaps, it was right. But then I glanced at Marcy, standing resolute beside me, the flicker of her light a beacon against the chaos. Fight, Tommy! Her voice rang clear, sharp against the dark, reminding me of our bond, the strength we shared. With a surge of newfound energy, I shot my gaze back at the flickering creature, my heart thundering with defiance. You don't own me. I'm made of every moment of hope, every laugh shared, and every hand held in the dark. You cannot take that away. The monster's shadowy form recoiled, a loud crack resonating as the very ground beneath us shook with the intensity of our resolve. But it quickly reformed, eyes narrowing in a predatory glare. Where there should have been fear in its gaze, there was instead a chilling excitement, as if it feasted on our desperation, willing to drag us into the depths where light couldn't shine. Come then, it screeched, clawed hands reaching out, shadows swirling around its fingers as if summoned from an endless void beneath. Let us see how deep your courage runs. Taste my darkness and join me in the eternal night. Before I could react, the ground trembled even more ferociously, cracking open with jagged fissures that belched thick, black mist, suffocating the air around us. The mist coiled with intent, creeping toward my legs, wrapping around my ankles, pulling me slowly into its depths, the pressure like weights dragging me into oblivion. Tommy's, Marcy shouted in panic, urgency lacing her voice. She dove forward, grasping my hand with fierce determination, and for a moment, her light flickered brightly, combating the creeping tendrils, sending bursts of luminescent energy upward. But the creature was relentless, thrusting itself against our light, pulling at the very core of our hope. The shadows swelled with ferocity, like a dark wave shifting beneath the fury of a storm, before suddenly breaking free to coil, turning the air into a thick fog that made it hard to breathe. "Let go," it bellowed, voice echoing ominously, drowning the air in despair. "Embrace the darkness. It is where you truly belong." And right then, the shadows converged into a swirling vortex, innovative tendrils wrapping around our forms, threatening to pull us apart. Chaos erupted around us, screaming shadows closing in, and as I glanced toward the abyss, I could feel despair clawing at my heart. Swallowing hard, I fought back tears threatening to emerge, focusing on Marcy's fierce gaze, that unwavering glimmer of light anchoring me against the encroaching nightmare. "Pull!" she shouted, her voice resonating through the chaos as she strained against the monstrous force biting at us. "Hold on to what we fought for. Don't let it take you." With a profound roar, I reached deeply into my spirit and called upon every ounce of strength I could muster. "We are the light that shines in the darkness," I screamed, pushing outwards with every fiber of my being. The orb pulsed in response, radiating warmth that burst forth in radiant waves sweeping through the mist, claws of shadow writhing in retaliation. But instead of faltering, I turned inward, letting the memories of every moment we'd shared fill my heart with an unwavering glow, washing away the icy grip that the darkness clung to. Amid the cacophony around us, light surged like a tidal wave. It pushed back against every whisper of despair that had sought to drag me under, and I felt the shadows falter once more, shrieking against the brightness that engulfed them. "This is our time," I yelled, joining with Marcy, hands intertwined, feeling the warmth pulse between us, a connection set ablaze with resilience. Together, we devoured the darkness like a flame devours fuel, sweeping away its presence. The monstrous figure twisted in agony, anguish spilling from its crooked maw as light consumed the very essence of its being. But just as victory shimmered on the horizon, the creature let out a final, haunting scream, piercing the air like a blade. "You may escape for now," it howled, tendrils thrashing in despair. But there was an unsettling promise laced in its words, a prophecy echoing with ominous foreboding. "I will return to claim you. You will never be free." And with that proclamation, it shattered into 1,000 pieces, dissolving into shadows that melted into the air. The ground trembled just once more before sinking, leaving an unfathomable chasm leading into darkness. As the echoes of despair faded, a heavy silence enveloped us, thick enough to drown in. Desperately, we clung to that fleeting moment of triumph, hearts racing, breaths mingling, frightened yet alive with the thrill of survival. "I thought we were done for," Marcy whispered, her voice trembling but steadier than before. "We still might be," I replied, catching my breath, my heart a pounding reminder of how fragile our victory truly felt. A haunting chill lingered as the shadows seemed to linger, dark and watchful, an unseen presence that lurked just beyond my comprehension. But deep down, I could still feel it. The thrill of warmth ignited by our unity, the promise of hope flickering just beneath the despair that clung to me, a tenacious candle glowing in the dark. Bursting forth from the depths of uncertainty, I knew that this fight was far from over. "All we have to do," I said, unwavering, my voice steady as I met her gaze, "is keep walking." With that, we turned away from the remnants of the darkness, moving forward into the unknown. But the shadows breathed heavily behind us, the threat of despair forever lingering. And just beneath the pulse of hope, I couldn't shake the feeling that the next wave was just waiting for the perfect moment to descend once more. With that, we turned away from the remnants of the darkness, moving forward into the unknown. The forest stretched endlessly ahead, an imposing labyrinth of twisted trees and shadows, each step echoing with an unsettling silence that weighed heavily on us. Every crack of a twig felt amplified, as if the very air held its breath, anticipating our next move. I glanced back, half expecting the monstrous figure to rise again, but only silence greeted me, thick and almost suffocating. Yet, the sensation of being watched persisted, like countless eyes hidden in the underbrush. Waiting. Marcy's hand tightened in mine, her warmth a reassuring anchor amid the encroaching dread. "Do you feel that?" she whispered, her voice barely breaking the spectral quiet. "What?" I asked, straining to hear over the thumping of my own heartbeat. But then I caught it, a faint rustling that seemed to trail us, just beyond our line of sight. It was subtle, a whisper in the darkness, like ghostly fingers brushing against the leaves, beckoning, tempting us to look back. "Let's keep moving," I urged, dragging her forward, the urge to flee battling against my curiosity. Each shadow stretched out, elongated by an unseen light, morphing into sinister shapes that danced just beyond perception. The trees pressed in closer, their gnarled limbs twisting into grotesque faces that seemed to mock our fear, laughing silently at our plight. The path twisted sharply ahead, narrowing until it felt as though we were being funneled into a trap. Something was changing. The air thickened, felt charged with an energy that prickled my skin, like static electricity surging before a storm. Suddenly, a piercing scream shattered the silence, echoing through the trees, sending a jolt of cold fear straight to my heart. It was a high-pitched wail, full of anguish, as if someone was being dragged into the very depths of despair. "Tommy, what was that?" Marcy gasped, her voice trembling, her grip tightening as she pressed closer to me. "I don't know," I admitted, my gut twisting tightly. But even as I confessed my fear, an urgent pull beckoned me deeper into the woods. I resisted, but the drip of dread in my mind fought against the warnings, pulling me forward. "Stay here," I cautioned, but I could tell Marcy wasn't about to let go of my hand. She took a deep breath, determination flashing in her eyes. Together we stepped into the deeper shadows, moving cautiously as each small sound gnawed at our sanity. The shadowy figures playing at the corners of my vision grew more pronounced, forming silhouettes that seemed almost human yet twisted, hunched over like forgotten spirits trapped in a world of their own design. Their whispers were a chilling wind through the trees, weaving through our thoughts with chilling clarity, each word sharper than the last. "Join us," they murmured, the sound curling around us like smoke. "Embrace the darkness." "No," I spat back, finding a sudden spark of anger. "We won't let you in." But even as I said it, I felt the shadows push closer, wrapping around my thoughts, weaving dark, seductive stories of failure and regret. "Tommy!" Marcy's voice broke through the haze, pulling me back. "Look!" Ahead, the path opened abruptly into a clearing dimly illuminated by a haunting pale light. Shadows danced on the edges, and in the middle stood a stone pedestal, old and worn, etched with unfamiliar symbols that pulsed with a dark energy, drawing me closer. The air thickened with palpable tension, and as I approached, a low growl emanated from the pedestal, vibrating the ground beneath my feet. It felt as if the very earth was alive, breathing, hungry. A series of sharp, hissing breaths met our ears, a symphony of unease resonating from somewhere beyond our line of sight. "Well, what does it want?" Marcy murmured, both fascinated and terrified, her wide eyes fixed on the growing energy radiating from the stone. Before I could respond, the light from the pedestal flickered violently, casting grotesque shadows around us. Clarity turned to confusion as the symbols began to shift, twisting and rearranging themselves until they resembled faces. Twisted, anguished expressions frozen in perpetual torment. "I think it's calling us," I said, my voice strained, the words spilling out like a desperate confession. "But it feels wrong. I want to go," she whispered. "Let's leave." As we turned to retreat, the shadows around us began to pulse in rhythm with the eerie light, coiling tightly, eager to ensnare us within their grasp. A low rumble erupted, something deep and foreboding, ricocheting around the clearing as the ground trembled violently beneath. "Leave," the whispers hissed, now echoing with dark amusement. "You belong to us now." Panic surged through my veins. "Run!" I yelled, grabbing Marcy's hand and pulling her back as I fought against the overwhelming urge to succumb to the depths of despair. But as we fled the clearing, that piercing scream burst forth again, a cry of agony that cut through the air like a hunting knife. Alarming and desperate, it felt disturbingly familiar. "Help me!" echoed through the trees, each syllable laced with despair. I stumbled, torn between fear and instinct, my heart pounding as I recognized that chilling cry. "Stay focused," Marcy urged, but my legs felt heavy, dragging me back toward the source of the haunting call. "Tommy, don't! Someone's out there!" I said, my voice frantic, heart racing. I longed to reach the voice, to save whoever was trapped in this nightmare. The shadows pulsed around us, thick and oppressive, wrapping around my limbs, grasping at my thoughts. "This way," the darkness urged, weaving webs of temptation that were too easy to fall for. The forest darkened, the trees whispering secrets of despair, urging me deeper into the unknown. Marcy pulled harder, her face pale with fear. "You're hearing things? It's a trap. It's just the shadows trying to lure us." We hesitated, caught in a standoff between hope and reason. I could feel the tug of war in every fiber of my being. "I can't just leave someone." And then, as if sensing my conflict, a figure materialized from the shadows, flickering like a candle in the wind. A woman, her face obscured but her eyes wide and pleading, filled with frantic desperation. "Please, help me." Before I could comprehend, Marcy gasped, and my resolve wavered. But then the shadows surged around her, writhing in a frenzy, that sickening darkness threatening to swallow her whole. The light from the pedestal pulsed ominously, casting shadows that twisted and contorted, mimicking the anguish of the woman trapped within. "We can't help her like this," Marcy gasped, her voice barely containing her fear. "We have to break free." But the woman's voice beckoned again, insistent, drowning out our panic. "Help! Don't listen to her! I need you! Tommy!" Marcy cried, shaking my shoulder as the shadows loomed around us, growing thicker, denser, the very air pulsing with dark energy as it coiled tighter. With a roar of defiance, I stepped back from the shadows pulling at me, forcing myself to breathe, to think. I gritted my teeth, realizing that we were standing on a precipice, teetering between salvation and despair, and every choice counted. "Run!" I shouted one last time, knowing that the darkness wouldn't give up easily, and we had to break free before it consumed us completely. Marcy yanked me forward, pulling me away from the chilling voice that felt like a noose tightening around my heart. We sprinted through the forest, our breaths coming in ragged gasps as the shadows chased us, swirling and snapping like a predator intent on its prey. I could hear them whispering behind us, taunting, mocking our desperate escape. "You can't run from your fate," they hissed, each word curling around us, digging deeper into my mind. Branches clawed at our skin, leaves rustling with an unnerving life of their own, as if the forest itself was conspiring to keep us trapped within its deadly embrace. I stole a glance over my shoulder, half expecting to see the woman's desperate face still pleading, but all that awaited was the ever-thickening fog, the haze of shadow flickering in the corners of my vision. "Tommy!" Marcy's voice was strained, but the urgency in it drove me forward. Just ahead, there was a faint glimmer of light breaking through the trees, like an oasis calling us home. "There! We can make it!" We pushed harder, stumbling over roots that lay in wait, their gnarled fingers grasping at our heels as if they wanted to drag us back into the darkness. The howling voices grew frantic, echoing all around us, drowning out everything else. "You'll never escape," they shrieked, a cacophony of anguish and delight that threatened to engulf our resolution. to pull us back into the nightmares we worked so hard to flee. With each stride, I could feel the shadows ebbing behind us, their grasp growing weaker, but that only drove me to run faster. "Don't look back," I hissed at Marcy, knowing that giving in even for a moment could spell our doom. We were so close, practically tasting the freedom promised by that soft, luminescent glow beckoning us from within the forest. But as we neared the light, a sudden chill grazed my skin, the air becoming thick and cloying. The brightness flickered, oscillating between blinding glory and caressing twilight, and I could sense something lurking just beneath the surface of that sweet radiance. Something that wanted to draw us in, to ensnare me just like the figures behind us. "Tommy, don't!" Marcy screamed, catching on to the urge creeping through me. I felt like I was standing on a precipice, the allure of the unfamiliar light battling the brutal memories of despair that sought to encircle us once again. But then, bursting through the shadows, a chilling howl erupted from the dark, sending a wave of panic crashing over us. Just like that, it cut deeper than any blade, a supernatural terror that cut through my decisions, forcing me to confront the sheer horror of facing the unknown. The shadows surged forward, a black tide ready to reclaim what it thought was rightfully its own. "Keep going," I yelled, fighting against the weight in the air that seemed to grow with every second we delayed. Our feet pounded against the earth, each step resonating a desperate rhythm, an echo of our struggle against overwhelming dread. "We can't stop." Almost instinctively, I reached for the light, fingers twitching at the edges, nudging the shadows swirling around us. But the moment my fingertips brushed against that ethereal glow, everything went silent. The shadows, the whispers, the howls, all fell away, swallowed by the brilliant white that enveloped us entirely. In that moment, time felt suspended, caught between two worlds, the past and the unknown future. I gasped, fear mingling with wonder, and I felt Marcy's presence beside me, a warmth grounding me even as illusions of darkness began to creep back in, whispering sweet promises of safety. But then the moment shattered like glass, the light flickering as the figures re-emerged, clawed hands reaching out from the dark, wrapping around us with a ferocity that sent dread rippling through my core. They were ominous, almost comforting in their embrace, promising an escape from the chaos, but threatening to lock us in a nightmare eternal. "No!" I shouted, wrenching free from their grasp, turning to Marcy. Her eyes shone with fear, but also determination. In that instant, I knew what I had to do. I had to fight not just to escape, but to sever the ties binding me to that darkness, to stand resolute despite the looming terror. We faced the endless stream of shadows swirling angrily around us, our hearts racing in sync. "We will not be yours," we cried together, voices unified as our will surged like a lightning bolt through the chaos. The shadows recoiled for a brief moment, confusion mixing with rage, giving us a fleeting glimpse of hope. In a sudden burst of energy, I lunged toward the light, yanking Marcy with me, staving off the pull of despair. But as we crossed the threshold, the shadows cried out in fury, a bone-chilling wail that reverberated through the clearing, shaking the ground beneath. Just as we crossed the boundary, the light shattered with a blinding flash, enveloping us in warmth as the darkness disintegrated behind us. I gasped as the light surrounding us surged, washing over me with a safety I never expected to feel again. Then a deafening silence followed, leaving behind only the ghost of an echo, a lingering reminder of what we had escaped, an unquenchable hunger eager for our return. We stood there, hearts racing, a tremor in the air signaling the end of the darkness reign. I glanced at Marcy. The fear still sparkled in her eyes, but there was relief. We were safe, at least for now, but the scars of that horrifying encounter had etched deep into our souls. As we took a step away, the chilling whispers faded into distant memories, carried away by the wind, and yet I knew deep down that the shadows would never truly disappear. They would linger at the edges of my consciousness, always lurking, always waiting for the perfect moment to return. The forest remained, somehow still dark and foreboding. But I felt a resolve building within me, a promise that no matter what, we would stand together against whatever horrors awaited in the dim corners of the world. The land may have seemed serene now, but I couldn't shake the feeling that darkness was a patient predator, biding its time, waiting for our guard to drop. As we stepped back into the light, laughter broke the stillness, a hollow chuckle echoing through the trees. A reminder that the other side of fear was always waiting, always hungry, and it would take more than a flicker of light to banish it for good. But we would face it together, prepared for the next encounter, heartbeats synchronized in defiance, an unbreakable bond against the dark. And somewhere in the distance, I sensed it, a flicker in the shadows reminding us that our fight was far from over.